All right, we're going to go ahead and get the meeting kicked off. Thank you, everybody, for making this special meeting today for the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. We got a great agenda set forth with our consultant DTJ. We'll have at the end, before we adjourn, we'll discuss our next meeting plans, but we don't really have anything here at the top. Any questions from anyone before we get started, or are you guys ready to go ahead and jump right into the agenda? I'll take that as we're going to jump right in. So, Francois, go ahead. It's all yours.
Thank you, Ken. And can you hear me? So welcome to everybody. We're so excited for you to be here. It's our first meeting for this comprehensive plan, and you are the people that's driving that process. And we say thank you for being here. Thank you so much. And also thank you for committing to come to this and to be part of the steering committee. Because at the end of the day, you will become the champions of this plan. It will help sell the ideas and the concepts. So for that, we say thank you. Well, for today, we have a team that is here. In fact, our entire team is here today. And in a minute, we will introduce ourselves. Just to introduce myself, I'm Francois de Kock. I'm the project manager from DTJ Design that will be leading this process. And just before we go into the introductions, what I also would like to just mention is that, Nacogdoches is truly a place that I find very, very special to come to. I've been here about 4 times now, probably about 8 years ago with my wife for the first time, and then after that 5 years ago perhaps, and then recently 2 or 3 times. And every time that I get to Nacogdoches, it's as if I'm stepping out and away from the city. And I love it. I love what you offer here in terms of your beauty, but also just the people. And the quality of people that you have in this community. So for me, it's a tremendous honor to do this project for you. I look forward to working with you side by side as partners. So thank you for giving us that honor to do so. So for that, I would just say thank you. So at this point, I'm going to ask Ryan to do the introductions. We have kind of an icebreaker introduction process. So Ryan, before you do that, let me just go through the agenda. So we're a little bit behind time. I apologize for that, but the idea is after the icebreaker, Ryan will talk about the approach to engagement. How do we do it and why do we do it the way we do it? We will then talk about the personas, and that's how we identify the people that we need to talk to and reach out to. There will be something about branding, and then we're going to go through 2 exercises. Now, we will need a break between those 2 exercises, so there will be a break at about 3:25. So that then will take us to 4:30 is the time that we will end this meeting. So we just want you to know what lies ahead and how we will go through this process. So again, thank you for being here, and right.
All right. So yeah, we can switch over to the other slides there. So I'm Ryan Short, I'm with Civic Brand. I've also got Brisa Byford from Civic Brand. And so our role on the project is public engagement and project branding. Brisa's gonna walk through that engagement process, and then I'm gonna take us through branding. I know you guys had a conversation on that at your last meeting. And so I'm hoping we can kind of take a step back, get out in front of that a little bit and kind of address some of, what's the role of it? How's it going to work? You guys give some impact on what we've done, and they'll go from there. But the first thing we want to do is introductions. As you saw, we have a pretty full agenda, so we want to kind of get through the introductions fairly quickly. But what we want you guys to think of as you introduce yourself, say your name, and if there's a group or what you feel like you represent of why you're here. But we're interested in hearing what is your most quintessential Nacogdoches moment. And that could be, when you think of Nacogdoches, there could be a certain building that comes to mind, or a certain event, or a certain time, or something from your childhood. It could be last week. So just as we go around and share that, the consultant team will go first. But we want to just keep it moving pretty quick. I know you guys could probably talk about Nacogdoches for hours, but we want to get into the meat of the planning. And so I'll go first. So like I said, my name is Ryan Short. I'm a Civic Brand. My most quintessential Nacogdoches moment is exactly 10 years ago from just last month, January 21st. I was in London, England, watching Clint Dempsey play soccer for Fulham, and he scored a hat trick, and he was the first American to ever score a hat trick in the English Premier League. And we were on the front row, and in quick hurry of celebration, I held up a big Texas flag that I brought with me, and I had it upside down because it was on my lap, and I just kind of held it up. But that photo was on the cover of BBC, the Washington Post, kind of used around the world, and I'm standing there like a dummy holding the flag upside down. But obviously he's from here, and so I always associate Clint Dempsey with Nacogdoches, and so that is my moment, and I'll let Brisa go next. I don't think we're gonna pass the mic around, but yeah.
I'll project. Yes, I'm Brisa Byford, also a Civic Brand. My quintessential moment is the first time I came here, driving into downtown, and being the millennial that I am, taking pictures of all the murals, and posting that on Instagram.
And my quintessential moment is the azaleas. When I came here, they were in bloom the one time, and it was absolutely beautiful. I will never, ever, ever forget that. So yes, that's my moment. Jason.
So I was telling my mom on the way down, catching up with her on a couple of issues, and she reminded me that I had a photo in front of the Watkins cabin, so I need to go reenact that photo from probably when I was 4. So.
We've got the rest of the planning team in the back. Jay, I'll let you go next.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm Jay Narayana on the DTJ team. I'm really excited to work with you all. My quintessential Nacogdoches moment was actually driving into Nacogdoches the last time I was here, and the countryside and the roadways have these beautiful pine trees, which is unusual for Texas, and almost thought I was like maybe in the Rocky Mountains or something, but it really gives you that feeling that you're in a different place altogether. And then yesterday I discovered the wine bar, and I think that's going to be my next.
I'm Jody Short with Lee Engineering. We'll be doing the transportation element of the plan, and had lots of moments in Nacogdoches over the years. And so I'll just go back to my very first. I got to come to band camp here at Stephen F. Austin in early high school. It was probably the first extended period of time away from home, so just instilled great memories of Nacogdoches.
Maggie McMahon, DTJ Design. I got into Nacogdoches last night, and I probably haven't been since childhood before that. And I think looking out in the hotel room last night, I could see a store called Texas Size Bling, and then I think gunpowder and glam or something. Awesome store names, wonderful character like I've never seen. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm Danny Hayes with KSA Engineers. I'm on the consultant team. Got a couple of familiar faces on the committee. I do live here in Nacogdoches. My daily business is done here. I go to church just up the road. Quintessential moment, probably raising my kids here, and when they were toddlers and my wife was griping about making the Halloween costumes and dragging them through Scare on the Square, and just those kinds of things, and those able to get involved in those elements and making those memories with kids here.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking at me, so.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm Case Opperman, I'm the Assistant Public Works Director. I was born and raised here, and I wasn't prepared to answer this question, but I guess for me, I grew up here. I wasn't like most kids that couldn't wait to get out of here. I was all right with Nacogdoches, but I did leave for college. Didn't really plan to come back, but I wound up back here, and now I got to say I don't want to go anywhere else. Coming back here, raising a family here. This town, is where I want to be. So, I don't know what that's worth, but it means something to me. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm Mackenzie Rogers. I'm an intern, so I'm just kind of here to observe. But I guess my quintessential moment was 4 years ago when I moved to SFA. It's kind of just an in-between part of my life, but now I've found my home and I'm working on my master's, and I'm excited to be here.
Paul, do you mind starting here, and we'll go around the.
Okay. Paul Jackson, and I represent the African American Heritage Project. And one moment I remember when I was in military service, California, and it was, I mentioned that I was from Nacogdoches. Everybody knew I was from Texas by the way I talked anyway. And there was a large following of East Texans out in California, people from Lufkin and Henderson and places like that knew exactly what I was talking about. And also, it was a group with SFA, the ROTC group, that was actually doing some training out there. So that's it.
Sydney Kroll Register, and I am one of the people who wanted to get away from Nacogdoches and not come back. And I think that just the driving back to see my family from Austin sometimes and seeing how lush everything was, it finally just kind of hit me that being in Central Texas, as lovely as all that land is, that everything here is just so beautiful. And I don't think sometimes when you grow up here, we don't really recognize that quite as much. And so now every time that I go out and I can actually see a horizon, which is unusual for kids growing up in East Texas, it's nice coming back and being able to have all this lushness.
So I'm Kathleen Bellinger, I'm on the city council, and I welcome you very much. And it's hard to pick a quintessential moment, but I'll pick a recent one. When I was running for office, I knocked on a door and I said, hey, and they said, Kathleen, we already know who you are, come on in. We heard you might come by, so we made cookies. And they pulled out the cookies and tea, and no appointment, no anything. And so the Nacogdoches to me is all of our people. And so I know you'll take care of them all. So.
My name is Ed Poole, and born and raised here. Other than 4 years in college and working away 4 years, I've been here. I intentionally moved back to raise a family, and I'm very glad that I did that. One aha moment that I have is one of the first Nine Flags Festival parades that we had. That takes place in the beginning of December. It was cool at night, light breeze, had a wonderful parade on the brick streets. They had people milling around, 4,000 or 5,000 people, and then firework presentation after that. And I thought, this is why we live here.
Well, I am not a native Texan, but my husband, if you marry a Texan, wherever you are around the world, you do end up coming here. And I love it very much. I'm representing the Federation of Women's Clubs. There are many things I'd like to say about Nacogdoches because I'm involved in many things and many other places in the world. But one of the things I think is most important about the Federation, which most towns in America are tearing down everything they have. And the Federation has all groups of women, there are 20-some groups of women who work together from all political spectrums, and we work together on a common project. And that brings people together. So it's the one thing that I know of where everyone's working together, and that's why we're putting up statues instead of tearing them down. And we have, people really committed to this town and each other.
Great. Ken Deppish, had to think about this one for a little bit, but I think probably my most quintessential moment happened the first time I came here is about 15 years ago. I'm not from Nacogdoches, my wife is. And so we were visiting, and I had her parents in the car, and we drove downtown. We'd literally just driven into town, and I think we'd been here about 5 minutes, and I made a wrong turn down a street where you couldn't take a left downtown, but I didn't know that. And immediately got pulled over by a police officer who came over and then gave me a bunch of tips about where we should eat, where we should go out for that evening, what was going on in town that weekend, and then didn't give me a ticket, which I think is the first time I've ever been pulled over and not gotten a ticket. So that was a very good first impression of town. So.
Steele Wright, and my quintessential Nacogdoches moment was last February during the snowstorm. Essentially, our leadership team within the company and friends were receiving a lot of different texts from people whose animals needed feed. I mean, when it's frozen like that, your cattle have increased nutritional needs. So anyone who had a 4x4 went down to the feed store, the Farm and Home Center, and we were sitting there. We didn't even have power. But we were able to get in and just sat there bringing over trailers of feed and just unloading range cubes to as many people as we could, just doing it on the old honor system with paper, just trying to help out our neighbors. And, had people come over and help him. But it was really one of those times where the community came together on that loading dock.
My name is Brad Mall. I came here after 30 years in Los Angeles where there was no history. Everybody's young and beautiful. And when I came to Nacogdoches, it was incredible because in Los Angeles, there were helicopters whirring overhead all night long. And I came here and I couldn't sleep because it was so quiet. And I loved that. And I loved the brick streets. And I loved the presence of history in the Caddo Indians. And then I looked on the deed of my house and it turns out Sam Houston used to own this tract of land. And it's just steeped with, not 300 years of history, but 10,000 years of people living here. So that's what moves me.
Roy Bowden, and I'm on City Council, Mayor Pro Tem. I was born and raised in Nacogdoches, and I couldn't wait to leave this place. And it was a learning experience because I was gone for 40 years. Then when I came back, when you have a commitment to do something for others, small towns are the best place to do it. If I'd have still been living in Houston, I would not be in that position. And that's one of the things that keep me motivated to stay here because I'm the only one in my family that lives in Nacogdoches.
I'm Larry King. I'm with Stephen F. Austin State University. I was born, I'm a Ben. I was born in Nacogdoches, grew up in Nacogdoches, went away for college, stayed away for about 17 years, then moved back. My quintessential Nacogdoches moment, about 5 or 6 years ago, I hired somebody to work in the office that I was over at Stephen F. Austin at the time. And a few months later, found out that person was my third cousin. Had no earthly idea when I hired her, but my family's been here since the 1830s, so I'm related to a lot of people here. And you have to be careful about, who you talk about around me because of that, because I'm probably related to them.
I'm Kurt Sutton, and I was born and raised in Nacogdoches like several of you, and have lived in the Nacogdoches community all my life, except for that short time that I was away at college. And a lot of you have already stolen my thunder because likewise, it was when I had the opportunity to come back after college and make a career here in Nacogdoches. And I realized that the small Nacogdoches community and friends and family and neighbors and that atmosphere was very much appreciated. I could identify with that, and as opposed to where I had been away for 4 years. So that's my introduction.
Kurt, unlike you, I did not embrace Nacogdoches from the beginning. I had been raised in Dallas, Texas, and coming to a small rural community, it was difficult for me to adapt to the slowfulness and why people were so complacent and satisfied. And because I thought I was going to be here for a hot little minute, 4 years, get the college out of the way with my husband, and get on back home. But I've been here now 42 years. And so now I really do love the area. I love sitting out on my gazebo, writing books and doing the things that I do. And so I have a small little touring company as I take people around different cities and different states. It's always interesting to be able to contrast what we're seeing out there and what I'm seeing here. And I see a lot of room for growth. But no specific moment, just, biding my time, I guess.
Elena Hilton, city planner. I am an East Texas native, went to graduate school at SFA, and couldn't wait to leave once I I graduated, went to Frisco, Texas for a little while, then College Station, and realized that I didn't like the traffic, and I didn't like the busyness, and I didn't like all the things that come along with more of a metropolitan area, and so came back as soon as I could to raise my daughter, be closer to family, and we've had a great time since we've been back.
I'm Juan Paulette, I'm the planning technician. I'm originally from Port Arthur, Texas, and my most quintessential moment would be when I came up here with my dad. He was buying some land here, and I didn't want to leave my friends back home. But we got here, was looking around, and it just so happened that the Piney Woods Fair was going on, and my dad took me to that. And after that, I was sold. So I love it here, couldn't think of living anywhere else.
We didn't miss anyone, right? Or,
Oh, goodness. I'm just the IT guy. I'm IT manager for City of Nacogdoches, born at Medical Center 43 years ago, and had a lot of moments around this area. There's a reason I've stayed all these years later, because in technology, you can pretty much go anywhere you want, but just as a small peek into my life now, what brings me peace and joy is whenever these nice, clear, sunny days happen and I take the kids. I got a 10-year-old, 6 and 7-year-old. We go up to Pioneer Park, Pecan Park, Moroni Park. Been down here by the dog park now. It's just a joy watching them play and, you know, have fun with other kids, and you know, they're safe, and just a really nice town to raise my children in right now. Thank you.
cool. So let me grab the mic here. Okay, so I'm gonna try to stand kind of in front of your end so everyone can see me. So I'm gonna just lead us through kind of, yeah, lights. So just so we're all on the same page about what we mean by engagement and what our approach to engagement with this process is. So kind of our philosophy at Civic Brand, this quote by Jane Jacobs, famous city planner, is kind of like our guiding mantra, if you will. So it says, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. And so what that means in the engagement process is, in order for this plan to work and serve the community, we've got to reach as many different people as possible. So the best way I know how to kind of explain our approach is to use this corporate example, okay, of what we're looking for when we're talking about speaking to different audiences. So if you take a Toyota, they have a lot of different projects, and this is getting a little squished, so it looks a little funny, but they have let me get the pointer here, you know, they have the Tundra, which has got to be like rough and rough and tough, rugged and tough, whatever I was trying to say there. But then there's the minivan, right? So that audience is looking for something that's very safe, very family friendly. The people that want a Prius, they're looking for something environmentally conscious, maybe a little bit more hip and on trend. But then they also have people who've been buying Toyota for generations, right? That Toyota's kind of run in the family. And so some of these groups, like the truck group versus the Prius audience, their wants and needs can seem very contradictory, right? The like rugged truck guy and then the person buying the Prius seem like maybe they would kind of butt heads in what they're looking for. So what we're trying to do is those different audiences that exist in the community that might, you know, be kind of like the truck and the Prius group, where it might seem like what they're looking for, what they're wanting is kind of at odds with each other. We're looking for the common threads. So in this Toyota example, whether you want a truck or you want a Prius, you probably want something that's quality and dependable, right? That's the kind of stuff that we're looking for in this engagement process, is what are the shared values, you know, and not taking away from what the truck guys want or what the Prius guys want. What are just the shared common values among all the groups? That's what the engagement process is designed to uncover. So we have that input from everyone, and we can kind of like meet in the middle, right? So
to do that, we use a variety of tactics. This example here is kind of showing in these graphs on the left half, the pink half, there's some more kind of digital methods of engagement, and on the blue half is your more traditional focus groups, interviews, public meetings, that kind of thing. The point of this is to illustrate that per audience, so say people who are born in Nacogdoches, right? They might have a certain way of engaging in things that they're gonna resonate with more, right? Maybe they will come to a public meeting because they're like really involved in the community, they've been here their whole life. Versus other audiences might want to only engage online, or they might just respond to different tactics. And so all of this to say that the way we engage with people will be unique to the wants and needs of that specific audience. It's not going to be kind of broad brush across the board. That way we truly make sure that, you know, we are reaching each group. And so this is just a quick illustration. You know, Ryan's going to talk in a minute about the project branding and how that helps us reach all of these people, but of some of these methods that we use. So we have, you know, workshops, focus groups. We'll, you know, go out to people on the street, walking around downtown, and have maybe children's events, pop-up events. But then there's a whole suite of stuff that we'll do online as well, whether that's an online survey, a mapping exercise, a virtual room, things like that. Just to show that there's a lot of tools in the quote toolbox that we'll pull from based on that specific audience and what will do the best at reaching them. Sound good? Make sense? Cool. I'll hand it over to Ryan then. There you go. He'll talk about branding.
Actually.
Oh yeah, personas. Forgot about this one thing, just kidding. So as part of all this engagement, I mentioned all these different groups. We're gonna need to figure out who are these groups, you know, what groups exist, who are some of the key individuals and maybe community organizations that exist within each of those groups to kind of form our initial, like, who do we need to talk to, right? That initial strategy of who are the people and the individuals that we need to communicate with. So there's gonna be, and Elena, if you wouldn't mind pulling up one of the links that I sent you, it's the engagement mural. Yeah, that one. You can just hit enter as visitor and it'll get out of the way. And if you want to exit, you'll, right, yeah. Okay, so this link will be distributed to y'all because we really need your help as far as who are the people, who are the groups we need to speak to. And basically what this is like an online whiteboard. You can drag and drop stickies and things like that, but we're looking on this for either specific contact information of like, we think that you need to speak to this person and here's their phone number or here's their email, or just like, we need to speak to someone at this group, but you might not have contact information for a specific person, and that's okay too. But really in the columns, it's split up some by demographics. So like students versus retirees, things like that. And there are some that are more interest groups, so like arts groups, cultural groups, historical groups, groups focused on transportation, things like that. And then the blue stickies kind of making rows is just splitting those columns up a little bit further. So like in economic development, for example, one of the blue stickies is established entrepreneurs. So people that have started their own business and they are really established in the community versus like young entrepreneurs who are maybe, you know, just shortly out of college and looking to start something. We want to just kind of get as many names on this board as we possibly can per category, because then we'll go in and figure out, okay, we're going to do a focus group with these people, we'll meet one-on-one with these people, or we'll reach out to this organization to help us reach this specific demographic, and it'll really help guide the process all along, especially as we get further into it and we've realized we're having trouble reaching this one specific demographic. We can go back to this list and look at, okay, here are some contacts within that demographic that will help us reach that community. So we don't need to go like, we don't need to start dropping names on it, but just know that you all get this, and we want you to add as much as you can. Now, that's right.
All right, so branding. Project branding, I guess a couple disclaimers first. When we're trying to create project branding, we're trying to create an identity around this planning process and around this effort so that the plan can have greater awareness, greater participation, and then ultimately greater buy-in. The more people that are aware of it, the more people are gonna be involved, take the surveys, come to meetings, do all the things that Brees was just talking about. And so to do that, it's so much more about just having an easily recognizable identity so that if they see a survey or a focus group or all these different things, there's no confusion about, well, is this the downtown? Is this the comp plan? Is this some other effort that the city's doing? It's branded, so it's very clear that this is this unified effort. What that means that it's not, though, we're not trying to brand Nacogdoches with this project branding. We are gonna get into, visioning and things like that long-term, but that takes a lot more rolling up the sleeves, having conversations about who do we wanna be, what's our identity, where have we come from. What we're talking about here is literally just that project branding. We're wanting to create a singular brand that both the comp plan and the downtown plan can fall under, because again, there's gonna be some surveys and things that we're asking questions that inform both plans. There's gonna be times when we're asking downtown specific stuff, and so we wanna create a singular brand that people can recognize, and when they see it, they know a couple things. They know that it's for the plan, and they know that their voice and opinion is being sought. And so that's the main role of that. And so I also wanna make sure that, because our firm also does city branding and district branding, and those are 6-month to year-long brand studies. We don't want to do project branding for 6 months. We want to create something that's going to work, it's going to get out there, and quickly turn your attention to the bigger fish to fry, the real meat of this project, which are some of the exercises that Francois and Jason are going to lead you guys through. And so we know you guys answered some questions before. Typically, we would like to have been involved in that and kind of do some of that now. And so we kind of got a little out of order with some of those just because you guys were meeting regularly, we're here now. So I definitely recognize that possibly could have caused some confusion or heartburn of like, what are we doing? What's this for? But areas that the project branding is going to be used is everything from, there's going to be a project website. It's that 24/7 hub of information. That's going to be where surveys are taken. The surveys will be branded. The communication, the PowerPoints, the actual end report itself is going to take on that identity so that when you see it, it's just all very consistent. It has a look, it has a feel, and you recognize that it's part of this effort, it's part of this process. And so we got really great information from both this committee as well as the downtown committee, as well as the staff group that we met with before. We surfaced a couple themes that we wanted to explore, a couple colors that we wanted to explore. And so what we're going to do right now is kind of just honestly pull the curtain back, show you some designs and things that we've worked on. Some we think are really strong, some I think they're okay ideas, but I don't think they're the right thing, and I'll tell you which ones are those, but we want to hear kind of your thoughts and opinions on it. As designers, we always kind of joke that you don't want to ever try to design by committee. The hardest thing to do, only thing harder than designing by committee is designing by 2 committees, and we've got 2 committees here. And so we absolutely want your thoughts, input, honest feedback. We're going to take all of that in, and then our team will go back and then we'll come back from there. But this is kind of an opportunity for us to pull the curtain back, show you what we've got, and get your input. So I'm going to walk you through some of these things, and then we'll just have a quick conversation and discussion on it, and then quickly get on to some of the other exercises. So the 3 themes that we wanted to explore is 1, the idea of coming together. The community, and that could be, with Brisa, with the Toyota example, you've got, people that have been here forever, people that are brand new to the community, they might want different things. Those that wanted to grow, those that wanted to stay the same. But like, how can we all come together? There might even be people in this room and in this community that didn't even want this plan to happen, but it's happening now. How can we come together and make it the best that it can be? And so we want to explore some ideas around that. Historic and authentic. That's a theme that we wanted to explore, of how can we honor that history and authenticity that Nacogdoches has. And then there were some comments about improving and evolving and kind of just what's next for Nacogdoches, that next step. And then the top colors was, purple for obvious reasons with SFA. People identified that as a unifying color. Blue because the city uses that a lot. And then also green, I think, because of all the trees and the natural beauty they have. So you'll see of all of the options, we kind of looked at them through the lens of those different color options. So let's dive in. And these, again, we are pulling the curtain back and kind of showing you everything that we did. But we're kind of leading with some of the things that we think are the strongest. So kind of the first couple items you see are what our team put. So first in that coming together, NAC together. And so it's kind of playing off back together. And so you can kind of see a look here in purple. It says a comprehensive plan for our future created together. Here's the same thing in green, same thing in blue. Creating this visual language, a lot of times with the brand, it's not just about the logo, but there's going to be some other visual elements that as we go through this and we're styling buttons and icons on the website, or the actual report has icons and charts, it's always helpful for us to have different icons and visual design elements to work with. And so this is kind of what we think is a very, modern, fun take, but, kind of obviously tapping into the trees. This is another version of that you can see NAC together, comprehensive plan, and NAC together, the downtown master plan. So you can see how it's one brand, one look, but that would cover both. There were some conversations in the early staff meeting. I think these were the ideas that people tended to lean towards. And so there was some conversation of, is the tree the right thing? Or do we look at other things in there? And so that's where we definitely would love some of y'all's opinions. I'll go ahead and go through all of them and then we can kind of circle back to any feedback. This is another one, Together for Nacogdoches. So again, just a look and feel, but just a different way to do that. Kind of in the different color options. We've got some mock-ups in here to show, this final document or report that's created, what could that brand look like on the cover, Together for Nacogdoches. And this is the theme that our team thinks is the strongest because it's unifying, it's about bringing people together. We just, talked about all these different, you guys just went and shared all these different things, and we can already hear some shared values and shared themes of why you guys love Nacogdoches, and I just love that spirit. Another thing to think about with the brand is, I think it's really valuable. We're gonna do this process for about 10 months to a year. That brand is gonna build equity. And what I hate is when you build this brand equity and then it just sunsets at the end and kind of just goes away. And what we've done in a lot of other communities as we create the project branding, that project branding has the ability to live on and kind of be this public engagement brand that as the city and community does future planning efforts, they can do it under the brand of that, the branding that we come together. So whether it is a parks plan or any other future engagement stuff, you guys can do that under the Together for Nacogdoches identity. And you already have this built-in equity. So on day one, people know, oh yeah, that's that thing where I'm asked my input. The historic and authentic, truly NAC, so obviously focusing on truly as, authentic. Couple different colored looks for that. Different cover option for that, kind of just playing off of that. Truly NAC, but going a little bit more with the historic font, obviously the Texas shape. I don't know if you guys can see the kind of more historic ghosted images in the background, but as a way to kind of use a modern font with paying homage to, some of the historical buildings and characteristics and being the oldest city in Texas. So again, just some different looks at that and different colors. Improving and evolving, this is the one that, again, we're pulling the curtain back. I wouldn't make the recommendation of this one for a couple reasons. One, I think it just feels more like a campaign versus like a true project brand or project identity. But the kind of what's next for NAC and kind of has some of the handwritten scribble stuff to make it feel like it's a work in progress. We're planning, we're kind of rolling up our sleeves and drawing and figuring this out. It's kind of the idea behind that one. And then next in NAC, again, kind of a similar thing, but playing up a little bit more of the Texas symbology with the star and bringing back in some of the historic buildings and stuff behind it. So those are the concepts that we have. It's not as simple as, hey, just pick one. We want to hear input. There might be ideas that we mix, match, try additional things based on your feedback today, based on the downtown committee. I do know we shared some of these ideas with staff, and they were kind of tracking towards some of the things that we were tracking towards with some of these earlier ones of together. So yeah, I would love some of y'all's feedback, any just knee-jerk reactions, questions about how it's going to be used again. But again, I just want to stress, it is important, we want to get it right, but we don't have to fully capture Nacogdoches in this, because this isn't the city brand that's going to be there for 20 years. It's the project identity. So any thoughts, questions?
So this is for 12 months or 15 months only?
Yeah, I mean, so this would be, this, all the communication for the project would be done under this brand for the duration of the project. The actual plan, we have to style the final document in the plan. And sometimes that lives on in like a project website where you can monitor implementation of how are we implementing things along the plan. So it's very common that these plans have just some kind of identity and look and feel to them because we have to style PowerPoints and all of these things. We like to give it a name so that it's easy and there can be a, go to knactogether.com and learn about the project, learn about the upcoming event. And so it absolutely will be here for the life of the planning process, but then there will be some elements of it that can live on through implementation.
Maybe I can also share a little bit, is that often you call the plan, in fact, this would have been called the 2022 plan, or it may be 240 plan, depending on what date you see as being the date for which you plan. Now, what we've learned in the industry is that if you use that name, put a date to that, it becomes that plan. And that's the only name that you have, that you use once, and that's it. What this does, it opens the door for this to live on longer than the period of you doing the plan. Meaning that as you start implementing the plan, you can do it under this umbrella, under this name. And you can even do other projects within the city that's not necessarily associated with the comprehensive plan as part of NACT Together. It's kind of our ethos as a community. And therefore, our projects that we do fall under this name that we've established. The beauty of that is that people in the community recognize that. They see that, they see it again, and every time they see, they know that's associated with progress. It's associated with new projects. It's associated with, well, we are working in this town. We're doing things better for our community. So that's where the value and the beauty of something like this, rather than a date or a name that's static.
Did you have a comment here, Hussein?
Yeah. I like the feel of it. I'm sure there are some other nuances, colors and other things, but the pine tree, of course, represents this forested area, and I like the idea of us coming together, and I think it's something that lives and can develop. And, but as with anything new, you just need a little time to get used to the feel of it. Yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments, or we want to?
I guess one thing that comes to my mind is like the word connected is like kind of like whether it's connecting the dots or being like connected to the internet, because we are a rural community, but we do have the internet, which does kind of separate us from a lot of different things. Because one thing that I hear from people is, do you have internet where you live? And I mean, they just are genuinely curious about that. And that's just something that comes to my mind as a consideration.
Yeah, so you're talking about using the word possibly connected as we're connected with each other, we're also connected to the internet globally.
Yeah, just something I'm throwing out there, yeah.
No, I appreciate that, thanks.
Yeah, my thought about that too is that some of this comes from living in Austin and driving an hour to go 5 miles, but I don't think we're that far from Houston. Like, I go to Houston to go to the grocery store sometimes. And so sometimes people are surprised. They think that we live out in the boonies and there's nothing near Nacogdoches. And it's really not the case. It takes like 2 hours to get to the airport. And it used to take me that long to get to the other side of Austin. So that idea maybe of some kind of, like we are much more connected to the state than, sometimes we have that Pinewood, what do they call it?
Pine curtain.
Pine curtain thing is this idea that we're just kind of out here and not connected to anything. And I don't think that's a very helpful idea. And I don't think it's accurate.
Yeah. No, I think those are great points. And, some of those I think do start to speak to like, what's the identity for an external audience? Whereas I think that the role of the project brand will be more of that internal audience versus when you get into like economic development, like recruiting and things like that. But those audiences do look at your comp plans and they do want to see, what you're doing. So I think those are great suggestions.
2 issues, a little bit. We're not SFA. So purple is weird to me because, that SFA is if within Nacogdoches. Nacogdoches is not within SFA. So when you take on SFA's colors, which are very dominant, you, in effect, are saying one is dominant over the other. And also, in 20 years, hopefully not, but it might be orange and white. You know, it might be burgundy. It might be A&M or UT. So,
Don't say that.
sorry. I mean,
It happens.
you know, I just want to get it out here. It's Nacogdoches. It's not NAC. NAC is what people, you know, it'd be like saying Diego or San or something, you know, we're Nacogdoches, we're not NAC unless.
And for you personally, when you close your eyes and think of Nacogdoches, what color does come to mind? Is it blue or green?
Green, the green is attractive to me. You know, I don't need, Kurt, you know this, are those trees even here?
What's that? What?
Are those trees even here?
I would say that looks like a
I don't like the tree.
pine tree, maybe on the right. The one on the left is maybe in
Christmas tree.
time. I don't know.
It's lost.
It's not, I wouldn't, those icons are, the one on the right might be a little more representative of a pine tree or a Christmas tree, I guess, actually, but,
The one tree looks like it wants to die.
Some of the like more Texas elements, the Texas shape, the Texas star, do you think those are more appropriate things if we start to pull in something, or is there something else you think of?
I do like the idea of both the blue and the green for the Blueberry Festival thing that people know us about. And then the green because we do want to grow and we don't want you to just stay stagnant, you know, I mean, just like when so many things didn't come to town and that somebody put up a sign that said, or maybe they wrote it in the newspaper, you know, they used to say Nacogdoches, a gateway to Texas, and then someone said Nacogdoches, a gateway to Lufkin, because we were holding back, you know. So you do want to have something that shows growth and blue for part of our tradition, but going forward, you know, rather than, not that I don't want the history part, because that's the part I really love the most, but I think you need to have that plus the other, you know, somehow.
I would agree about the purple thing. I do feel like people that aren't involved, that could be a little isolating for a lot of communities that don't have anything to do with the university. If they, anytime you see purple in NAC, we just assume it must be an SFA thing. And so they may just think it's just within the university.
Kathleen, what about you? I noticed that you
frowning?
got a thought there.
Well, I think, this is my gut reaction. I don't like the NAC together thing. And the reason why is because I think we're already together.
Yeah.
And it sounds,
Yeah, like the federation, I mean.
right.
It sounds like we weren't.
Right.
The
It
negative.
sounds forced to me. And just to clarify, I think it's a huge misnomer to say that people didn't want to plan. They wanted to look at different alternatives. That's really what was happening. So this is kind of, I think you might have the wrong impression, because I think people really, I mean, I love planning. That's my whole life is planning. But I think the NAC together, it also sounds a little trite. I mean, because, you know, like I'm a social worker, and, you know, together we're all, you know what I mean? It's just a little.
Kumbaya, Nacogdoches.
Yeah. And I really would like to see our history. I don't know what to.
Kumbaya.
The reason I'm frowning is because I don't have an answer. But I'd love to see more about the history. We are probably, if not the most unique town in the country, because we have so many histories. We have Native American, we have France, we have the 9 flags that we're talking about. We have maybe even 9 flags or something. We are really, really unique. Our history dates back thousands of years. We picked to live here 46 years ago before we ever looked for jobs, my husband and I did, and never regretted it. So something about that specialness. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I didn't mean to get carried away, but.
Yeah, well.
I think we are together, is all I'm gonna say. I think the idea that we can walk into knock up to a stranger's door and they go, oh, hey, come on in and have, or you get the wrong change somewhere and you call up and they go, oh, don't worry about it, we'll figure it out, come on in. That's the simplicity of it, so, I don't know. Sorry.
Awesome. Well, I think we got great. I mean, I don't want to cut anybody off if anybody's waiting to speak, but I also do know we're at 3, and so I want to make sure you have time to go to the next thing, so.
Mabel, you wanted to share?
Well, I was just having a little vision of perhaps some kind of a mosaic in the background of the various cultures and history, and et cetera, but with the tying together, saying Nacogdoches together. But the background would reflect more of the unique differences. And then the word "nac" together. Just a thought.
It's an idea. Larry, what do you think? We've spoken about SFASU, but we want to hear from you.
Yeah, purple should be out.
Yeah.
There's too much purple, if there can be too much purple.
Well, you just start to divide, like in some places and where they have the gown in town part, and we don't really have that so much here, as evident in other towns, like where I went to college in Kentucky. You really had a town and you really had a gown, and they never did things together at all. And here they do already.
Yes.
What about the buzzword Nacogdoches Forward? Has that been considered? Is that something, that sounds like maybe something that I'm hearing come out in these comments. Nacogdoches Forward. Nacogdoches spelled out completely forward.
I love Nacogdoches spelled out completely, but personally, but that's my 2 cents, but I don't know.
Well, that is a very good idea in terms of a plan like this, because the plan looks forward, doesn't it? And so you'd find many other plans, actually, what we've already done in the past. Often the word forward comes forward as part of the name. So,
You have forward together.
I don't know about a specific one that has that, but often it is. So as much as yes, it's a good idea, it is all what we know has always been used a lot in the past.
Okay.
So we want to think what is unique to Nacogdoches. I have an idea, and I'm almost too scared to share it because I don't want it to stick, because we are going to talk to another group as well, but the fact of connection, I like that. When I heard about connection, I really, really like that. History came out very strong. I think that is so important. And what comes to mind for me is authentically connected. So what you do there is you authentically, you see, it talks about history, you say we do things truly in an honest way, and we have a history, but also we connect it with us, each other, but we're also connected to the future as we plan. Anyway, so suddenly I came up with an idea, but again, I don't want to become the main person here that gives an idea, but that's how we develop ideas, and you can imagine, as many people are here, so many ideas we have. So Ryan Bruce has the most difficult task of us all, to take all those ideas and try to come up with that slogan and then color and design. It's not easy, and tomorrow we talk to another team.
I think, just to add to that, I mean, because in this room, we're probably not gonna ever get anything, everybody 100%. I think the most important thing for any brand is how it's just consistently used, because the biggest goal is for it to just be recognizable, that this is the project, and this is being sought. It's not trying to capture the spirit of the city. When you think about the Nike swoosh on day one, that meant nothing. It was just a funny little shape. But because they've consistently used it, it's now recognized. When you see it, you know. And so I think no matter what we come up with, the goal is going to be we're going to have really strict brand design guidelines to where everything's very on brand. Everything looks like one thing. It's very clear when they drive by and see it. Oh yeah, that's that. And so above all, more than the word.
Right.
And you know, we do want to think about like what other communities are doing, but again, at the same time, it is an internal audience. You know, Jason and I have worked on Forward Fate, you know, and Connect Happening. Like those are brands that were, you know, in other places. And you know, when you start to look at it and you're in our world, you see every little town, and it's easy to feel like, oh, that's already done. You know, I don't know that we need to get too hung up on that because most people in Nacogdoches are not aware of other comp plans that other people are doing. It's all about just an internal plans that you're doing. So I greatly appreciate the feedback. We're gonna definitely go back and put our heads together and come back with some additional ideas.
But I want to make sure that everyone had a chance to comment. Roy, any comment that you wanted to make?
Only that I couldn't, I'm still, the NAC together, I can't buy into. And the trees is definitely out. But I would like the full name Nacogdoches, for sure.
And that's something that we hear consistently, is the full name is important to you, not just NAC. Yeah, and it makes sense, absolutely.
In blue.
And the blue, yeah. But Ed, thoughts?
Just absorbing. I don't know that this is my strong suit, so I'm listening to everybody's comments. Yeah.
Any comments, so thank you for sharing. Well, with that, we really appreciate this first exercise that you could participate in. Thank you, Ryan, thank you for Brisa. So the next exercise, we're going to break into two groups, so we can have the lights, that'd be great. And we're going to split right between Ken and Steele, and this group and that group will separate. And what we will have some of these flip charts right here for you. And what we want you to do is within 10 minutes, we only give you 10 minutes, define 5 core values of Nacogdoches.
5 what?
5 values. Core values. They're those things that are so true to the value of what Nacogdoches is about. What makes it Nacogdoches? What makes the special place? What makes it the place that's different from any other place? What are the core values that you as a community have? That's for 10 minutes, and after that 10 minutes, I'm going to ask you to write one statement, like a vision statement. This is our vision statement. And then after that, we will share that with each other. So within 30 minutes, we want to do those 3 things. First, those 5 core values, write a vision statement, and then we share it with each other. So, know what you're willing to do? Okay.
So we can
Okay, I'm working, I got it. Bring it over.
It's got good handwriting.
So not me.
That's the first question.
Okay, where are we going? In those, we're right here. Okay. On the flip chart. Okay, well, my handwriting's out.
Oh, we thought you must have this book, so you want to come around here?
Oh, we're over here.
Yeah, because
Oh, Shane.
you shouldn't see others work.
Oh, you don't want them to see our part.
No.
I have an idea for the other part. I didn't want to just take over a lot of stuff.
I'm from Nacogdoches.
Around the right here.
They don't want us to see.
We don't want you to see what they do, and they don't
So
want.
you must turn the other way.
So the person that's, you must choose a leader and choose someone that can write down and someone that can
Chosen.
back. Perfect.
Hey, one of the core values is, hey, excuse me, one of the core values is trust.
Trust.
We trust, we don't have to hide out.
They can see each other's work. Okay, so.
Okay.
Where is the?
Haven't, it's. Haven't.
They sabotage us, they're trying to look and see what we're
Red
doing.
team won, blue team.
What do we get, 5 minutes?
Okay.
Their stuff, don't worry.
I like that, yeah.
Okay.
I will.
Maybe try to pick,
Right.
same letters, you know, like friends, family.
The values.
What I mean, something that has.
I get a question quite a bit when I drive around new people looking at Nacogdoches. They ask me, what is the best thing about value? They ask me what the worst thing is. Tell them it's the same thing. It's not an family. There's a sense of community.
I'd like to have it.
That's a good way to put it.
Allegiance.
Allegiance to family.
In the business.
Maybe belonging or something with it.
Belonging or something.
Community / belonging, I think that's the same thing.
History is not just
Hey,
like.
did we lose?
Yes.
Friendly. Yeah. The town for pretty older and the deceased and all, it's known as
Yeah, sorry.
town for happy.
It's coming.
I don't want to say it like that, but people really do. Stay inside the house.
Yeah, our teams win. Not.
I wanted to throw up candor, because it seems like there's a lot of people who express themselves, they believe in, and how they feel with our community.
What were you saying, Paul?
But I was put grumpy under me.
I think the welcoming idea is good.
Thing along the lines of like,
Another community that
honesty, integrity,
you didn't,
do I?
didn't lead anything. And so here, a lot of our leadership,
Anything else coming to mind?
Unity,
very good positive.
value.
Hello to you, and to you, and
Would warm be another word for welcoming, or
I would say our friend.
Yeah, lots of churches.
Like welcoming, accepting, I mean, something like that, yeah.
I don't know if accepting.
I want to go too far.
Value, but education is really important to people moving up.
I was gonna say like friends, family, future, da-da-da, so you gotta kind of.
What about trust? I mean, we trust each other a lot. I mean, which is amazing. We have differences, we have a lot of trust.
Well, that's,
I think it's safe here.
everybody works together and we don't.
It's a value that's important to us.
Different this and togetherness.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back to.
promoting the,
Safety
Yeah.
in my home, I don't feel in danger.
if we want to, that's good.
Streets like your police,
That's something that we.
you know, of being pulled over and stuff. Like Kens. Still Kens.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so trying to kind of get some ideas down, and then we can start marking them or circling if y'all want to hone in on some specifically. Did any of these speak out to y'all more than the other ones?
Places, whether those photos they had up there were so busy,
I sure can.
you know, that you could connect each one of these.
I know that when I drive in from Dallas or someplace, I always feel better because of the air seems cleaner to me here, because it's fresher, the greenery seems better. So I don't know if that's a value, but the outdoors,
Somebody came to visit us the other day. There's a house that's been
the
abandoned.
natural environment that we have here.
It is almost by the woods. Somebody
You know,
was like, oh, that must have been there for
green.
30 years. And I was like, oh, no. It's maybe a year. Like, that's what happens. Like,
Why couldn't
A little while, hadn't it?
you could say connecting, Nacogdoches connecting history, these things in the future.
So,
Keep adding, or is anyone feeling more strongly about these more so than the other ones?
On the agenda.
I would say belonging, welcoming. I think that's all.
I'm gonna have one,
where do we want to pick?
and they create a,
Yeah,
Oh, I have a whole.
carve out stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Go.
I'll be next week.
are there any of those that overlap?
Values?
One of our guys.
I want to throw up one more that is connected.
You got them right there. You got history, community, belonging, welcoming.
I'll be there for
Trust and trust.
if anybody has any questions.
Connected as,
About
yeah, so.
about rebellious.
rebellious?
You say the community.
Like with the university and like we are more. Lufkin thinks that everybody that we are here are very much more independent and rebellious.
You can cross out fresh air because you got the natural environment.
I'll turn that one in for him too.
These two are
It's a nice way of saying, try to secede things.
Started the whole like.
Yeah.
Want to do what y'all tell us to do thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better than.
Faith goes,
Maybe even family might connect. Is that,
They need to put you in timeout.
Okay, what else did we have to do?
So we are hitting on some very similar things within the family. I mean, would you say that that kind of works within the charm as well?
That was in the
Yeah.
budget.
They can pick it. Yeah, I like it.
Those kind of connect.
Before that, that was just.
small town charm comes from our faith, our unity, our families, you know.
For those in particular.
Being independent.
It's the charm of this town, which is the history and
Rely on the people with
families and all that stuff.
Connected.
I feel like this is in your wheelhouse.
Y'all, I mean, it looks like I'm visually drawing flows to this word. Do y'all feel like that's accurate in the way that you're feeling about what we have up here?
Needed the budget amendment to get the extra funds to actually.
I would say B, and we can increase it. It doesn't, We need history. Connect.
These are all part of our,
To become an independent and
something like our
moving around.
something that relates to the community. Maybe we'll break out what our 5 items, specific items. If we were gonna have a vision, what is our community?
An independent,
Community.
trustworthy, connected community.
Sunny side.
Let's start there and just wind up.
My hospitals are in trustworthy.
How about we add to say connected to the past?
How
Trustworthy.
do you want me to start the sentence?
Get the history.
Huh?
Community.
Well, I'll just wait. Y'all let me know when you have it.
Nacogdoches, creating community through.
Okay, so you guys must think about writing your statement, your vision statement.
That we are.
We're working on that.
You said something earlier.
And creating a community.
Nacogdoches is creating a
Start with connect. Connect.
Creating a united community.
The past, present, and future.
Where are we putting it?
I know, we got a big.
Connected to the past, present.
Darker. Environment.
It's too many. It has to be. If you have to have.
Something that won't stick in your head.
Yeah, you have to have something that.
It's gotta have history in it, for my opinion.
Sure.
Environment.
What else am I missing?
And that car seat in the back seat,
Can you see okay?
Somewhere up there by the end of it.
it's past the center console, you know, it's
About this right now.
enough because you're pushing.
Well, that makes it sound like we're.
Maybe you could say
I don't really like her being in that little car anyway.
quaint and united. And that would kind of bring in some of the small town charm.
So,
Really, talking about creating. Since we've been here for so long, I feel like using a more established word.
there's no ratings, you know, they're 50,000.
Yeah, Nacogdoches, a united community.
Some of them, like the Tahoes and things.
How much more time do you need?
Preserving.
I don't think too much longer.
Unite
Look at it.
a family.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
History.
Yeah, that's good.
And then do we need to add anything about the charm?
What is small town charm? What is it? What makes a small town charming?
How much more time do you need?
That makes me think of Red Big Streets, the old architecture, the old like forest that we have, but it's kind of tough to put that to.
I know.
I like that responsive.
Yes.
United through faith.
Connect.
Even if I was one.
Cars or whatever,
Okay. With natural, does it work?
History, faith, family.
I've got history here at the end, so.
I don't know.
Maybe
How about, what if we do a,
within nature connected.
No, if you think about it, and I'm not trying to put a slogan here, but
Sure.
actually, Tori, you have history that you've made, and we're still making history now by coming together.
correct, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself as only focusing on the
Yeah, we're not
past.
old, old, we're still making history with your new internet.
Put it between.
That's new history.
That people have. So,
One more minute.
Okay, it ends our natural
At the beginning of it, something.
If you're gonna have all that, you say that much, you have to have something that kind of brings it all together, you know?
We don't have it in.
But that's just
They
more
can
of like
look at it. They can put that, although.
Okay, to be a nature conscious, independent, trustworthy community connected to.
That's good.
Each other.
Oh, yeah,
Too much. And each other.
That's why you guys get paid the big bucks.
Exactly.
Kind of what you're.
Sneaky, smart. Nacogdoches.
I mean, I know we get
Recent training that we had that I'm not.
fix our commas and ands.
Let me just tell you.
30 minutes last time.
You did it.
positive.
So, are you done? About gas. All right.
I think Paul did.
She started feeling bad, I think.
Stick that one back for people.
I'll make that easy.
Figure it out.
Share with each other. So I think still.
Yes, sir.
We have one sheet or two sheets?
We have one.
Why don't we put it on the wall so everyone
Okay.
can see that? And then we have one or two sheets. Just put it on the wall right over there.
For that purple.
Put it on the wall. Here, I'll go grab
Got a
some.
sticker on it.
Sticky.
I think size different.
That's good. I avoided it. I finally did get it last month.
Have to vision.
I do too, normally. Don't right now because.
How'd you stick that to the wall?
I just had it, so.
I was gonna have.
Glue or something? How'd you do
No,
that?
on the top of it, it's like a big Post-it. Oh,
I am a lot of times. I'm used to it.
I think I belong in that group. That's got the things that I had on my list.
I'm afraid y'all scribes had a little bit better handwriting than mine.
But my people wouldn't take it.
Well, he said, we read that.
No, you're right, great.
Okay, you guys first. Who's the spokesperson?
Yeah, I'll be.
Yeah.
So how do you want us to start going over this?
Explain why you chose those values.
It's like the newlywed game.
Each of them just say why, and then tell us why do you have the statement that you have.
So in terms of how the process or how was it described?
Just how people came up with a word and why that word.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through what our words, so we had small town charm. We then went into family, the allegiance to family. Talked about history being football, candor, connected, unity, faith, education, safe and safety, community, the natural environment, and the fresh air. Those are what we came through. Do you want me to elaborate on any of that?
If you want to.
Let's see. I mean, that was a pretty fast and feverish exercise.
Yeah, and that's the idea, is to come up with your first ideas, your quick ideas that you have in mind. Mabel, do you have something that you want to share and add to that?
Okay, so these are what we came up with. And then for our vision statement, we had Nacogdoches, a community united through faith, family, education, and history in a beautiful environment.
That says a lot. In one sentence, that says a lot. Well, excellent. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you going through the exercise and doing it so quickly. I mean, this is great. I appreciate that. So, the next group.
Okay.
Pick it out of the way, so people can see.
Okay, our values were independence, also appreciating our history and showing that we were connected and welcoming through community, belonging, and being a welcoming community. Trust, being connected, and that we did value nature also. Okay. And our mission statement is to be a nature-conscious, independent, trustworthy community connected to the past, present, and future, and each other.
I like it. I think it's excellent. It's really good. Do anyone of you in the group want to say more about that, maybe expand upon that?
Or can you elaborate on independent, what you guys mean by that?
We actually meant rebellious, but we got.
We have hand flags, that indicates rebellion.
But I really do think, I think with the university here, compared to some of the communities in Deep East Texas, we tend to be a little more willing to think outside of what we've done for 400 years. As much as we love our community, love our history, I do think we tend to be a little bit more independent than some communities do.
And I think that's part of the reason we have such a rich history. We've had a lot of independent people, you know, for a long time.
We've been a melting pot for years, you know.
Some of them criminals.
Depends on which country you're, which side you're on.
What I think I like about it is that you combine various ideas as you came up with them, and then you put them all together in one statement. And that takes an art form. I think that's excellent how you've done it. And you can do the same here. I mean, you look at the various terms that you have. You have family, and then you've got football and candor and connected. You've got education, you've got community, natural environment. Interesting that natural environment comes in both times. And then you bring that all together in almost like have your vision for your community. So just doing that exercise is very interesting for us as the consultants, because we learn about you as a community by this exercise. So obviously we will record this, we know it is in our background of our knowledge, and we say thank you for taking the time and doing so. So the next exercise is going to be done on a map. So we're going to give you a map of the city.
Oh, a map.
And we have two different exercises for the groups. This group, we want you on the map, and maybe what we can do is either we can put two tables together, or we can work with one table, doesn't matter. But with a pen, we want you to draw and point out what areas need to be conserved and protected in Nacogdoches. It can be cultural, it can be natural, it can be anything in that nature of, cultural and natural. Just think about what it is that you would like to see protected. We have big maps that we will give you. And on this side.
Repeat that one more time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's on this one.
So this is not your exercise, so you
Okay.
have another.
It's over there.
Your exercise, and this is from still onwards, the same group. What we want you to do is take a map of, again, this big map there at the back. We want you to draw, and look at that map over there, we want you to draw neighborhoods.
Oh, so what are we doing? Culture?
Truly unique,
Right down here, sit on either side.
independent, but can identify as a neighborhood, a community that has certain character. We want you to identify those and then tell us what are the opportunities, what are the challenges as well.
We can bring chairs around with the other side.
You know what I'm saying? So, you can draw on that map if you want to.
Yes.
You can have one on the table, whatever's best for you. Maybe easier just there on the wall, I guess.
Areas.
Want to draw on that one, by all means.
Oh, areas.
So, okay. Questions?
No?
Pretty clear.
Yeah. Thank you, Maggie.
So.
Well, on my behalf, you can draw the historic Mound Street, because that's all the.
You can do that, and then you can just make it so that you can share with everyone.
Give me both. And I've got two.
I got one over there for you.
Start doing two at once.
Oh, that cable's gonna be in the way.
I was wondering with all that other. Downtown's got.
Right.
So I want to preserve one.
Grab one of those. Probably the red.
Oh, yeah, we can do different.
Self-dealing.
Okay, but you want to say like, this could be history. Okay, look, this is history.
Not just me.
Right here. Oh, I see.
Purple is gonna be nature. Another reason, can you think of another reason we'd want to protect something other than history and nature?
Right, and history.
I'm trying to make a.
Oh, to color code, you're making
We're
it.
gonna color code it.
I like it. I like
So
it.
this will be nature.
Is it?
This is
Yeah.
because of history. Is there another reason? Community, like
Really bad people.
like to protect certain communities.
Big thing.
It's probably going to be.
What is that? Like, I don't think
Yes.
the street needs to become a big part of town, because there's a whole bunch of people who live over there who,
Oh, okay.
where else would they can? What would be
Yeah,
worth
they're
for
going to
that?
look at neighborhoods.
People?
They're doing neighborhoods, we're supposed to do cultural
Oh.
thing.
Well, we're just,
It looks like that's kind of a.
But anywhere that we-
area to write the
areas that need-
the descriptions on. Do we want to do the descriptions on the cards that, yeah, we could do them on the outside.
Let me go ahead.
Put the name of the neighborhood and then start writing out what the description is for it.
Yeah, that's good.
Sign Hill.
And the challenges and.
Well, all of them.
Yeah, this
And
whole
this-
neighborhood.
Yeah.
All the way up to the park, I think we want that
Yeah,
whole.
up to Washington.
You know, the
And also Shawnee,
I agree, Shawnee.
Is that because
What
of
else?
people or because of history?
Yeah.
Is
That's
it
on the,
Shawnee? I think it's
yeah,
Shawnee.
right?
It says Rayburn.
It's hard to see. I think it's behind that, actually.
Come around.
I can see.
I think this is Shawnee.
Crossover, it should be like right here somewhere. Right here.
In here.
We'll just circle it and say Shawnee.
The oldest.
Is this for
It's
people?
just south of
Are we
me,
protecting
right?
this for the people or for the?
Yeah.
History.
Not all the way to.
Yeah, I think it's behind this, actually.
You know,
Classic.
Yeah.
down from Betty Marshall is the oldest brick.
How far
Not
up?
the whole, just up that street, right? I think that's Shawnee.
Yeah, this
Is
neighborhood-
Rayburn is Shawnee? She's trying to circle the Shawnee area. I think it's this.
So let's start creating.
Beautiful.
Not on.
Carpenter's over here.
Well, the old.
No, but
Yeah,
this
we're
is
talking
the,
about
I'm thinking this is the street, and but whatever it is, just put Shawnee.
Yeah.
Full Shawnee.
Well, here it would be up.
I think it,
They've written all this stuff right here.
yeah, it
That's
probably goes
Main-
like
This is
around,
Main Street.
probably goes down here and then around, I would
No,
guess.
Comes off of Main
Yeah, Main's
Street.
right
It's right,
there.
it's right under this
Yeah,
thing.
that's
So
what
where do you
I,
want me to circle? Right here?
yeah, basically.
Just circle and say Shawnee Street.
Yeah.
We can extend it, yeah,
You
we
got
can,
St.
we can
Paul
extend
and
it,
all
because
that
it
in
could be
there?
like.
Where else?
And then, for historic, I think you gotta do this
Oh, yeah, that-
south of Durst, this area right
All the way over to
here,
Virginia.
probably down
The Virginia area.
this whole area.
Yeah, those are
Virginia, all
beautiful.
the-
Sunset, there's Paris.
Okay.
Yeah, where does Virginia stop?
So now we can talk about the challenges.
This is Virginia here, I think, right?
Okay.
No, that's
No.
Sunset. Virginia's,
Virginia's gonna be right off of
yeah,
North Street, I mean South Street.
Yeah.
Here's South Street.
so it should be
This is Virginia right there.
Yeah, so it's all hidden behind stuff. So basically here, it's not up to Powers, probably up to like Douglas Road, and then it's out, like this whole area is historic, yeah.
Would you consider it?
I mean, some of it may not, we could figure
I
out the
would probably
boundaries.
do a little, but just put the Virginia.
When you look at the historic overlay, only a small part of this is actually in it.
We need downtown preserved,
Yeah.
this whole thing right here.
Yeah, probably all the way to the creek.
Okay.
So that whole area.
Now, how do we break down these individual?
Miller, and, yeah, I think, yeah, this probably
Then you've got.
should go all the way to the trail down there, yeah. Just extend it.
Yeah, that way, that's all.
And
I mean, a lot of this stuff.
Anything,
there's some stuff over here, isn't there? Like Mill Pond area, isn't there like some historic stuff? Not sure.
Historic crack house.
Mill Pond? Well, now they are.
what else is,
Trying to get a best case.
and I'm thinking of some of this stuff on 21 out here.
I guess we can connect
Out this
to.
old Spanish stuff. We need to identify.
Mission Tejas and all that, that's way out of town.
Yeah, that's in the county. At Caddo.
That area too.
But now, so we need to,
What about natural stuff?
all the parks.
Yeah, all the different parks.
And the water, everything.
Okay, so you can create a new circle.
We need to mark that Virginia Street area.
We got it.
You got it already?
Doing the parks.
And the water, the whole waterway.
And then we've got,
And the trails and the water.
I guess we've also got.
Flood zone, man.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it's throwing me off.
Flood zone makes it like the creek is like right here.
I'm here to tell you that the creek is.
oh, it does, it
The
does.
thing that destroyed the water that destroyed the ice park, destroyed the park. It's gonna cost me $32,000.
Where's Pioneer? Oh, we already got
This is a park,
Okay.
isn't it?
Yeah, that's called park. That's what I was looking for. Anything else on that? Roll wise?
Now let's keep going.
Depot.
But it's because they.
Have a piece of history.
What else can
Or nature.
Nature, I mean, the two creeks, 99% of that.
Going down to.
You have the trails now, which people really enjoy.
Yeah.
I think that's good. You get into the south part of it.
Oh, we forgot Millard's. although that's not really illegal.
And we need Mound Street, Mound Street area with the,
Yeah, we got that, that's right here.
That's what I know.
Inside all this.
I think they're wanting to see how we perceive
What were you saying?
the neighborhoods, because I think they're gonna compare their map to ours. Like Nacogdoches is gonna have it on, you know, essentially, what do we? Sure, that looks.
Is there anything up in the,
Educational end. Then,
See, I would.
and then would we?
in this area that
Yeah, this.
watch out for?
Okay, let me orient myself where the.
There's Miller's Crossing. Here's Reggae.
North, south, and
Yeah, Reggae, Pecan.
Right here.
Is that Pearl Street or?
Oh, here's Pearl right here.
And then we've got this strip, all in the middle.
The only thing I know that.
Kind of an
We haven't kind of
rental district.
separated that out.
They stop the pond and fish over there.
Oh, that's over here by Lowe's.
Let's
Where
grab
that is,
that for
right.
natural.
It's right here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's down here.
Where's Jade and all that?
Yeah, Jade.
It's here, it's
That's an
here.
area.
That's an area that these.
That's the green.
Anything for people, like, that we want to protect?
Well, I have some things I would like to do. I don't know if it falls in what they want there, but I just think it's terrible. Part of our town.
That's business. It's really neighborhood.
And then you've got all these other areas.
The only one
Having to
wrote these.
no gutters, no anything, and that's just not right.
How much more time do you need?
How much?
That's what
Haven't started challenges and
That's very true.
identification, but we need to start talking about some of the
You're right.
primary challenges.
That's probably a different question. He'll
I
have
know,
to do
that's
that.
why,
So,
but I want to.
where's your Himalayan from the school?
Right here.
What time do you need?
Yeah, what is that?
Fighter squadron, I was in.
Yeah, there's a lake.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Okay.
That would be I don't know what the.
This can is.
Whole move is,
Not near me. Oh, it is.
Right, and I'll start doing.
I don't know. Even that.
He says that.
But you know, there's other area.
Yeah.
They see you.
This area and this.
That's not the road.
Because they.
Now they're brave.
Carpenter school and all of that.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Challenges.
No doubt.
How much time do you need?
I mean,
We will do it as long as we have.
And we got the cemeteries here, right?
thanks. Put against.
Broken.
This investment has not been.
Because it's oil rich.
Yeah, or.
Over to Mount,
They're getting everything they need. They take over.
That's what we need.
burial grounds. I mean,
So, you know, that's.
It's gonna hurt, I guess Italy and, and in all those places.
We have to.
By the.
well, I mean, it's better for me to
That's
say.
why I want to sit in council.
I mean, that's such a wonderful coming together of the, when they all came out. Anniversary. And we're gonna take those things and
All our chips, all that kind of stuff.
Is there a gym? Cemetery, which I think is a wonderful thing, you know.
All those. Good job. You're really good with those.
Okay, Will, look, you're in charge of markers,
Except
girl.
for.
That's because I got a 10-year-old and a little kid I'm used to doing.
Now, see, she's
We're
young,
missing
cause
the
she,
top
do you
there
do it
today.
with 2 fingers? Do you do it with the 2 thumbs, or do you do it thing like this? You can tell how old some
I'm too
how
old.
they use their phone.
Hey, still remember my phone number, you know, Forest 13129 when I grew up.
Like, kind of like.
On our farm, we had a private line.
Yeah.
That's.
Well, do you know that Nacogdoches is not, used people say Nacognowhere, you say, but Nacogdoches, for my friends, is on the way to everywhere.
On the way to.
They're on their way back to Ethiopia, and they live in Hawaii, they come here before they go there. They're going to Europe, they come to Nacogdoches first, and then they go do this. If they're coming from Massachusetts,
We lost it during the last project.
They come here.
Yep. I agree.
I have one
I don't
family
know if we ever had
that
it.
came here 5 times in 1 year so that they could go up around Tyler and buy
hand me
wine
the
to
purple
take
one.
and give around the country. There you go.
I think we do
Ring around that hole.
Okay.
and this over here, this
Oh,
is
it's on
soccer.
the,
You know,
yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Where is it?
This
It's right here. Okay.
now they gotta go back.
That soccer, I guess, right?
There's a sports bar. Tyler.
They gotta go. Bill Fuller had left.
And the horse racing is over here. Yeah.
Expo and all
Oh,
that.
yeah, the yeah, I don't know what,
Years ago.
oh, that's a good question. This is,
Well, it's been 18
then,
years.
oh, Mill Pond Park too.
Our base was in Philippines.
We missed.
Where's the lamp?
Bay or one of those kind of.
I want to.
Now, Subic Bay, there was bases together at the bottom. Subic Bay.
What about the landfill?
And also the
Well, I
history
know the lamp light is
Yeah.
historical stuff we want to preserve.
My brother-in-law was in the Air Force. He was in the embassy there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Probably about the same time y'all, you were there.
Now, we left.
History, we should probably do the Old North Church.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Good.
It clogged up.
Eventually you,
Yeah, I mean, it.
get that.
Mud or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
ash and everything.
It gets
Oh.
below time.
That's a good
Oh,
question.
yeah, they were all blurred in
They're
there,
all
the
in
purple.
purple.
They're all in
That's why.
purple because they're all tied to the university, but I think it's still worth trying to.
Got there and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy?
Well, we'll do it like
I
this.
think it was very important
Yeah,
that
there you
the
go.
person who mentioned first about the purple was.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it is.
Yeah.
What else, Michael?
Well, it's hard to delineate between the trail.
Yes.
You know, it's hard to.
And the
Trails.
Yeah.
Both trails.
I got more creek than I want to deal
You
with.
found some parks.
So Michael, you are going, afterwards, you can interpret this plan for us, is that right?
I've tried to, yeah.
I got a question, Michael. This is in your wheelhouse. How come when you go to like their river or creek will be like lined with paving and asphalt and doesn't
Because they're-
erode and is very neat? and-
For that purpose, so that
Yeah.
it doesn't erode.
Yeah,
But there's no habitat.
yeah.
Idris, do we know where those are occurring? 'Cause we should-
Right, gets
So you
rid of
have no
the,
wetland grasses.
So we really do
come and
want
take
to
care of my
stop
creek
the
bank.
erosion.
well, you have to leave areas for that.
That's right, and that's a water quality issue, so if
Yeah.
you have natural habitat in your waterways, and those, you can increase your water quality downstream. So that's it.
Let's hit.
Gotta go grab my kid real quick.
So when you took the other group, tell us why you chose that for the baby.
You want us to,
Doyle's downtown.
That'd be great, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do that.
I'm going to grab my kid real quick, I'll be right back.
You want Hannah to go?
both creeks.
I gotta take. She already got y'all's kid?
I don't know.
You gotta make them laugh because it makes a better picture. You gotta do a joke like. Get that guy back.
Oh, right around Maroney when he was.
And then you said there was some also down here. Was this like? It's like on
Street, Washington.
Yeah, Washington Square.
Washington Square.
Yeah, and it was at noon.
So would this be like 3, 4 pedestrian safety?
You got the downtown soccer field.
Dempsey, but also the other Dempsey.
Dempsey is sports club, baseball. North Street. Okay. You get softball.
I don't know where's
Okay.
that.
Where is our city?
The red dash line.
Well, it may be covered.
Yeah.
Does that mean it takes in this?
Yeah, they annexed the airport.
Here it is, right here.
Probably
It's split there.
It's trying to carry.
So that's why it's got
So
that
are
weird
we
shape.
leaving this out?
I don't
Well-
know. Well, the airport,
That's the
I
airport.
guess, but
That's the.
I know.
preserve the airport.
That's what I'd say. Thought the city was here.
Airport,
Right, it's annexed.
downtown,
Not a lot of traffic.
But this isn't the ETJ, is it? Seems a lot bigger than you think.
The ETJ is
3
driven by your
miles?
population.
That's 3
What
miles?
does that mean?
Gosh,
Opportunities, challenges.
Where
so that-
they're gonna come for your next.
so say you wanted to build something in
You
here,
you have to get permission.
you might, yes, you might,
If you're gonna do a subdivision plan.
Yeah.
It's gonna get covered within the city regs.
city zoning codes, things like that.
Some, not all.
So if you really wanna not be under it, you gotta get out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go further out.
Yeah, you go up to Central Heights.
But it's not taxing.
Yeah.
You don't have to be taxing.
Okay, so this we did history, nature, and when do we say people, what do we want to put out that?
Yeah.
There's some things that I was not aware of. They were working on this. And you wanted to.
They can also do opportunity sections that can immediately address.
Yes.
Get over
lots of benefits.
development blocks. Great, terrible, and then they closed them. And then if those people want to get out, they just go over
Yes.
back down the Road and go down.
This down here.
Turn around and come back.
Yeah.
So what would you do if there was a
Kind of big
emergency,
emergency
you know,
drive,
you want to
yeah.
get out? I think they're probably gonna make some exits for that.
As part of this, I mean, all the thing with the down, you come in on 59.
Oh,
This is
yeah, I
done.
know.
If you want to exit,
But you
you'll
see here,
actually.
we don't know yet, but
So
we
at that time, they had this closed.
I know.
And so you
And that
only
was
had
the
one
only
way. You had one way out to
And all
Spratt.
these people had to come.
Come down to
all-
Spratt, and
yeah.
then come back
But they
down.
should have always had more than one.
See where this side too,
Oh, this is an awful side. This is.
I think that,
Nature, I mean, history, well, I don't know.
Right.
That's supposed to be
I
nature.
think the hope when they were doing these subdivisions that they.
If they haven't, they need to.
but it's a place out there called Ponderosa.
Yeah.
Mobile homes and everything, and they're just kind of cut off. The roadway is really bad.
You can get to it, there's a back entrance to the house right there, but that's.
And it's an area you have to be careful about because so.
That's what we need up here. Well, it's kind of become isolated.
Did this get added, you know? Has that been like that for a while? 'Cause that neighborhood's pretty old.
What is this?
That's
Nottingham.
That's a little annex.
It looks like it's an 80s or 70s.
It's a 70s area.
That's on Highway 21.
Out
Yeah.
21 East.
It's weird that it was just stripped
There's
down.
actually a whole nother phase to that that's planned.
Because you got the railroad there, and you got
They were
the.
trying to tell us to get, well,
And it's
Well, you know
it's
they
an
have
older
more stuff.
church
What
out
we
there.
really need is the city limits to go like,
Well, you have to give me some feedback.
that's what we
What else
need.
to add?
We need to annex all that.
look at, you know stuff.
About the residential.
Possibly,
I don't know whereabouts exactly where that is.
Where what?
The very first oil well in Texas is still an oil well that's out somewhere.
Jumping on University?
No, below Fredonia.
Oh, Galen Brooks. Talking about like past Bowles Feed?
Yeah, right there by Bowles Feed.
Yes.
You know, that's kind of inefficient access.
Oh, there's some.
Well, it's a challenge.
There are other things that are out.
Right past,
Oh, yeah.
Not the mounds, but
Yeah, the ones that are.
Out 21 towards Alto.
That also is part of our industry.
Outside the city.
okay, but I never know anybody.
Is that called Caddo?
The Caddo Indian Mounds are out in Alto. They're out 21.
He was saying that here Walmart is.
But there's tons of.
Start digging, we could probably find some.
No, you don't want to go to.
Yeah.
Where,
That's not right.
I'm trying to find, somebody find Walmart for me on
You got a
here.
lot of problems. once you
Okay,
start
should be
to-
right
Well, at
here.
some point, somebody should
Rose Lake, that area,
The Rose Lake.
Bradmo will actually be down in the.
Yeah, and then sometimes.
on the mountain, no, I'll be.
When I lived in town, I mean, there would be
Gonna do that.
118
Right, I mean, it can't.
There was no street.
Where is it going then?
Hours.
Once a year, so there's a Rose Lake.
But all of this was the hall.
It hasn't happened in a while.
Oh, yeah, Rose Lake, right there. We are.
Put in.
Rose Lake.
And realized.
Never quit.
It's like Google Maps.
What are you doing with that?
Started routing
I think it's.
drivers of trucks and everything.
And they used to own it, it used to be all the way over to.
You brought it
Now
up.
they.
That's the other reason I like to see you. Minutes later, I can go get my kids.
This side. Go down
Can you
past.
put it up on the wall for us, please, and then we can talk to that? Sure. I wonder whether we have some.
I could just hold it. Oh, how did they stick there?
Lena?
Hey, like,
Jason?
The only living.
Jason?
Family member there.
What's good, Lena?
Max was gonna pick him up.
Yes.
He would have been great for this.
Baby brother. Max is-
Did they have you?
so the other thing I like about the town is in 3 minutes, I can go grab my kids. and be back.
Thanks.
Yeah, good luck. I agree, no. What I like about the town is I can sleep through.
Dad around. That kind of goes for more schools than for house.
I think it's done now.
In 30 minutes, we can move on now.
I want us to move on.
I don't look.
We're just now coming to some more.
Okay, guys, we are going to see now. So, you ready?
Pass those before.
Have this one slipping good up?
To the right there.
Perfect.
The landowners aren't.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, still? Right, we're gonna share now.
I don't have a lot of faith.
And
What's the time? If you do.
Oh, no, I'm just hanging.
To be.
Theater also. Theater building.
wonderful single enthusiasm. I think it's whole neighborhood. Fantastic. It's very nice. Well, guys, thank you for the effort and time that you put in this. We want to now hear from you what you have come up with. Oh, last time this group was first, if I recall correctly. So this time we're going to ask for this group to be first. All right. So who's the spokesperson of this group? Ken, is it you?
Apparently it's me.
Okay.
Apparently.
I'll take it on. Okay, so we were tasked with identifying areas with historical significance or natural significance, and also groups of people groups or historic kind of communities in the city that should be preserved or recognized. So first off, I'm going to go through the historical areas. And one thing we're aware of is there's a lot of historical history maybe that's not been captured. You learn things all the time about people and things that occurred here that, because there is a long history going back so many centuries of things that maybe haven't been really understood or properly recognized. Yeah. So what we've identified here, we're realizing is incomplete, I guess is a good way to say it. That's something we need to do through this process and part of like our engagement. But as far as areas for history, I'll just start going north to south. We have the Old North Church area off of North Street and the cemetery there. Also Millard's Crossing. It's kind of obvious. Moving south, you've got what would be your generally understood historic overlay area including downtown, Washington Hill Historic District, and, all of the kind of historic sites, Durst Taylor, and some of the other historic buildings. And over to the west side, the Virginia Avenue area that also has a lot of historic properties and old homes over there. On the south east, you've got the Shawnee neighborhood, the historically African-American neighborhood, which has a lot of history as well. And then, I think that was actually supposed to be purple, but yeah, that was supposed to be. So those are the areas we initially identified. And then moving on to natural areas, we basically circled all the parks. So all the different Pioneer, you've got Ritchie Street, you've got Mill Pond. This is the baseball complex, the Sportsplex, which is going to be the renovated soon with some new lights and fields out there. There's a small lake up here kind of behind Big Lots, I guess, behind that, across the street from Lowe's. I don't know the name of it. Maroney Park, and then both floodways and trail systems that go along the Lenana and Bonita Creeks. And then on the south side, there's by the Carpenter Elementary, there is a park and a pond. And there's Pioneer Park. And I think that's about it. And then as far as, historically, when you're looking at kind of people groups, the southeast was more minority population. Southwest as well, though down here along the what'll be the I-69, I guess, flyover, and this will probably be the business route eventually. You've seen a lot more Hispanic population in that area as well. And so those are two distinct groups. And then anything else I'm missing? Or did I get it all?
That's it.
Well, we also had the airport over here, which is kind of just hanging out there by itself.
One thing I don't see there, Ken.
Yep.
What about the lake?
Well, they kind of figured they wasn't in the city, so.
Yeah, it's right over here.
Right, but it's important to you, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, there are others. There's the Caddo Indian Mounds. We just didn't go that far, if you want us to.
You can go as far as you want to go. Meaning that what's important to us, what we want to learn about are those places that are important to you as a community, whether it is within your confines of the city or the ETJ or even beyond, like you just said now. And because all those are part of your character and your identity, if you think about it. So, but this was a fantastic exercise. One question, Ken. You also identified the ball fields. Why? What is the conservation value of ball fields in your mind?
Well, I think preserving green space, whether it's a baseball diamond or a park, and there's parks there as well, but that's important because that eventually, the interstate will run right by there, and we want to make sure that we're maintaining green space, I think, inside the city limits as much as possible, because that would be nice land to develop.
Yeah, you're right. What I like about what you've done is you guys have not spent only time on that which is natural, which I kind of anticipated, but you also looked at those of cultural value and historic value in terms of the communities. I really like that because that is what conservation is all about. It's really about understanding the entire community and trying to protect the values that we have as a community about those things that are important to us. We want to conserve it. I so appreciate what you guys have done on that one, so thank you so much. Any comments by anyone about what Ken's group has done?
I just wanted to add up there on that to be determined thing and reiterate what Ken already said, that there are so many things that we're just discovering right now, like, who slept here or where, Sam Houston owned this property, or, that we really want, and not just those, but we have such a rich heritage, the African-American histories that we're just discovering on different streets, and that we would like to spend some time identifying those places, you know, from individual groups. We have never done that.
Like that first oil well in
Yeah, the
Texas.
First oil well in Texas is in.
Not in Kilgore.
And there's quite a few archaeological digs out toward the Caddo Mounds.
Yeah.
And out toward Lake Nack and Lake Nackanish and all that.
And I want to add something else, which I believe is we're losing it day by day, and that's the oral history.
Oh, yeah.
Stories that people tell that eventually we won't hear them anymore. That needs to be captured, if you think about it. If you really want to get the character of a place being protected and long-term being protected. Great job, I so appreciate it. Anyone else? Any questions? Well, thank you so much again, and the whole group, I appreciate this. Steele.
Okay, we were tasked with creating some boundaries for neighborhoods and then identifying what the challenges and opportunities were in this. So let's see, starting with number one, which is the historic area, which we've identified as kind of coming around, let's see, it extends from the borders of like Pittman and kind of comes up around Pecan Park and then follows a little bit of where North and South Street transition. So this is what we identify as number one. We talked about historic preservation, the encroachment of business on some historical properties. Talked about there being an opportunity with community block grants in this area. We talked about how much traffic there is on MLK and how that's been done in asphalt, but concrete would last much longer. And those were the points that we made for that one. For number two, we have these areas which are voting district, Southeast voting district. And we talked about the challenges being revitalization, disinvestment, and housing. We talked about there being opportunities in leadership, development, retraining, economic stimulus, and education. Then we have 3 and 4, which are right here, and these kind of go along Galen Brooks, and then almost around Virginia Avenue, out by Bright Coop, and this kind of comes down here along South Street towards like Spradley and comes up. We ended up kind of blocking these together at the end. And we talked about education, development, housing, stimulus, pedestrian safety. We've noted pedestrian safety in 2 of our prior meetings. Felt like this is an area that it's one of those areas to address that. Community block grants providing an opportunity. And this is also an area that has heavy electricity, heavy water, and you're going to have I-69 on it. Then we move on to Area 5, which comes along Virginia Avenue, around Davidson, comes up through Stallings, and then kind of runs through Douglas Road. And number 5's comments did not make this board quite yet, so we're going to move on to number 6, which is up here. And that ran along Star and Austin, and kind of comes up around Bell Point and the neighborhoods that also include Maroney and Stallings. For these, we talked about that the ordinance and code enforcement, where you got college kids kind of living amongst families being something to look at. It was characterized as having an older population, and I guess it's been discussed that there's going to be an enforcement officer in this area that would be able to help with that. Now, this one also had, we did connect that with 7, which brings us into North Street for the sake of time. And we were talking about for pedestrian safety again. You have some, this Briar Grove to East Austin cut through and this Maroney cut through that have traffic that feels like there could be a challenge there that's going to kind of roll into the pedestrian safety that we've noted. For this 8 area, which is here around SFA, which comes from Austin down to Main Street and runs along Bonita and around the college. We talked about the Pearl Street traffic. It runs parallel to North Street, but it seems like there's a higher volume of traffic moving at higher speeds than what that road was intended for. And we also talked about there being an opportunity for revitalization there. And that was what we were able to cover in the time allotted.
Man, you've done so much. In a very short period of time, you've done so much. I'm really impressed. I think you need a hand, definitely.
That was a team. That was a team. I was just described.
No, this is fantastic. It's detailed. It's to the point. You could point out certain things to us. It's very valuable to us. So thank you very much for the time you spent on that. Is there anyone in the team that wants to add to what Steele said? Yes, Roy.
On a couple of items, and the first one, the MLK repaving in concrete, in concrete and asphalt. We've been able to repave that, but cement takes 20-some days.
We're so good.
Yeah, it's several
I
weeks.
can't hear what
So-
it's saying.
So, due to production of America's favorite food, chicken, we can't get in there and cement that. And the other thing is, and I think they mentioned it over there on Shawnee Street, it's been historical, and that's been one of the issues in our community for a while, because it's not recognized on the books as being historic. And we've had, like, the high school that I went to, it was predominantly black. Well, it's now administrative building until they finish doing. But the school right across it, street from it, the name of our high school was named after the president that started the school, probably in the late 1890s, early 1990s. But it's still not, they let us put a plaque up outside, but that is, and it's, that area is, they may spot zone historical building or something, but historic overlay does not cover Shawnee Street, which is where back 1900s on up, that's where we lived and shopped and, had friends and went to school. So that's one of the issues we have with.
Well, Ruth, thank you for sharing that. One thing that you mentioned there. Well, thank you for pointing that, Roy. The interesting thing about historic preservation that I'm a strong believer in is that spot historic designation is not a good thing. You don't protect any building eventually, because eventually it just falls down because everything happens around it is not necessarily protected. What you need to do is you need to protect the context, because the context allow a individual building to long-term be protected.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying.
And that's just like right next to the high school, old high school.
Right.
There was a two-story little apartment complex for where when visitor teachers come in or whatever for the high school, that's where they stayed. And that was, I know that building was there in 1920s, but it's not part of the historic overlay.
But thank you for sharing that. And again, for this group, for all the effort and time you put in, thank you so much. Any questions about the other group about this particular group about the neighborhoods? Well, then we have a very fun exercise to do right now. I'm going to ask Maggie to actually, if you could type that we can see on the screen as like we normally do our meetings. Can Maggie have access to the computer that way? Is it possible? So what I want to do is ask you guys, specifically tell us, what are those bad words?
What?
And those bad words and those words that really make you feel, oh my gosh, what are they talking about? What are they doing in our community? Words that are concerning to you in terms of the planning world that we live in. Because we want to make sure that when we talk to not only necessarily yourself, but to the entire community within Nacogdoches,
We don't want to scare them off. We don't want them to hear words that they say, well, what do you mean by that? Do you think that we are naming a big city? You think we are Houston? You think we're Dallas? And use that word here, because we want to make sure that we communicate correctly. If we don't communicate correctly, we can lose our audience, and that's not what we want to happen, not so. So what we want to do, and Maggie will start typing any words that comes to mind that you say, you know there are people that don't like that word.
Lufkin.
Lufkin, okay.
Progression.
Good point.
Progression.
Progression is a word, yes.
Progress.
What is the other word? Progression or progress?
Rezoning.
Is it progressive?
Progression, what's the progression or progress?
Either one.
Yeah. I think progression and progress is fairly close.
Yeah.
But progressive.
No, it was not progressive. No, it wasn't progressive, was it?
No.
No. Progression or progress. Let's make it big. Let's make it about double that size if you could. I'm sorry that I give you that difficult task. Yes, thank you. So, yeah, we heard about African infrastructure.
Rezoning.
Rezoning, you don't like that word,
Oh, yeah.
rezoning, okay.
Or upzoning.
Upzoning, you don't like that.
Zoning.
Spot zoning, yeah. What other words come to mind?
What about density?
Yeah, like high density?
Just density.
Property taxes.
Property taxes.
Yeah, there you go.
Anything that you heard people say, or that you, if ever you hear about people say, well, we want to improve Nacogdoches, and this is what we're going to do. And you say, well,
Code
why do you
enforcement.
use that? Why are you going to do that in our town? We're different.
Code enforcement.
Code enforcement, yeah. You don't like the word, okay? Want to hear about that?
Top-down management, I would rather it be organic and grow up rather than being told what to do.
So let's look for a term for that. It's,
Grassroots.
well, the grassroots is the solution. That's what, Brad, you asked for grassroots.
Right.
You don't like top-down.
Yes, I don't like someone telling us
Exactly.
what to do.
So it's top-down versus grassroots.
Goes with our rebellion theme.
Right, exactly.
Is that like regulation?
Anything else that comes to mind? So let's go through those words. So Lufkin, I'm new to Nacogdoches. Why Lufkin?
It's the comparison with Lufkin.
Yeah. We have a very weird rivalry to be that close.
It's more blue collar.
Place.
They didn't like blue collar.
Culturally, we're very different. The reality is, I mean, our populations are really different, and they tend to be the place that gets, you know, the stories you always hear is like, they get all the restaurants, they get all of the stores. Although, as much as we say that, none of us would want that, because we also don't want all the traffic that comes with all those things. So there's
So
just,
how are you different culturally, if you say you're different culturally?
somebody else help me out here, so I'm not good.
They say they work better.
It's a labor area.
Unit
And that-
Progressive.
One program for.
That was a.
They have more law enforcement, they're more progressive.
They are?
They pave.
No,
I think they're more
We are.
practical.
You have more law enforcement. They lawless.
No, the word is they work better together, they support each other more in Lufkin.
And is it true that they do work better together there and they
Well, they
support
have
each
a
other?
reputation for it anyway, so.
Part of it is they have more major roads.
That's a good reputation to have,
Yeah.
not sad.
They have a lot of pavement. They pave Paradise. That's what I think of.
They have more major roads that come through.
They really have. They just,
Yeah.
there's not green spaces. They just pave it over.
And you don't want to be paved over. Well, we pick up something there, don't want to be paved over.
Whether it's good or bad, Lufkin has more of an identity as an industrial town and an industrial class of citizens.
They're more business friendly.
And Nacogdoches has more of an identity as a college town.
Right.
Just industry versus college.
It was the historical.
And not any history. Couldn't tell you any history about them.
About progress, progression. Roy, you mentioned that. Why is that a word that comes with some difficulty to you?
We have, I know a lot of citizens, and especially elderly like me, we like things just the way they are.
So you like what?
We like things just the way they are. And, you know,
Why?
well, mainly because it brings traffic, and, well, they think it brings traffic, crime, and crowdedness, you know.
Fear of the unknown, perhaps?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Now, fear of the unknown is often a big reason why you're fearful of progress, that's true. What about rezoning? That word came up. Why don't you like rezoning or the term rezoning?
Oh, I'll tell you. You live in an old historic house, and next door they tear down a historic house, and they build a parking lot and call it mixed-use business on ancient sacred cattle burial grounds. And it's encroaching upon what's left of our historic city. That's rezoning. And if you buy a house and you know what it is and what it's zoned, when suddenly they change the zoning and they call it progress, but you call it a disaster for yourself, you know? Even if it ups the value of your land, it becomes a little sore, touchy point.
I'm glad you share that with us. We want to know about that.
It may be a personal issue, though.
It is a and he's dismissive of that,
I'm
but
just
that's,
joking.
yeah,
Joking.
but it's all personal. You know, it's not a
I'm
joke.
joking because he's talking about his house.
Yeah, don't joke about my house.
I do not live there. I don't have a house. I don't live there and I don't have a house there. So it's not personal with me. But there are rumors that they're considering moving the Stone Fort building over to next to the old university building. What a disaster to put for the cattle groups that have just, on the anniversary of our 300 years, they came back. They're going to come back and take the things that were taken out of their graves that have been given back to them. They're going to put them in the historical cemetery. And then if we would move a building like the Stone Fort and put it on their burial grounds, it would just would tear down all the coming together that has happened. That would just be awful.
No, I understand what you say, absolutely, yeah.
I don't live there,
Yeah.
but I do think it's something people should consider when they're doing that.
Yeah. Let's go to the next word that we have. Upzoning, that's also not something that you like. Why?
Same reasons, because it may not be true, but the feeling is in the last 12 months or so, there's been a rash of changing the zoning in neighborhoods that haven't been changed, I guess, since 1974. I don't know when it all changed, but that's a general feeling, and I don't own that house or those houses. Ken, I'll never let you live it down.
And then spot zoning. What is it? What about spot zoning? Share with us, Kathleen. We want to hear. We want to hear.
I don't even know what that is.
So in order to have more, have your property, produce more taxes, I know in our area, which is Logansport Street, that goes into the park, there was something rezoned right at the end during the middle of COVID, got all the neighbors furious. And because I think what people don't understand is these older homes, to preserve them and to keep them up takes so much energy. These are not in money and time to keep the history of Nacogdoches. And it's flippantly say, oh no, you don't count your street, oh that's personal or something. That's the city, that's the whole city that people are trying to preserve, the older homes. So it's an investment in the city, it's an investment in the people who own them, it's an investment in what the culture is. So to overnight upzone something just because somebody wants an apartment complex, it's really a very, very sore spot. And it's not just, we've had 3 of these that have been contentious just in the last year. And that's really the sore.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Next one is property taxes. I think we all know that. Me included. So then we go to code enforcement. Why is code enforcement a bad word? Why?
Well, I
think it's a good word.
Personally. Property owners, in certain neighborhoods, majority of property owners don't live in Nacogdoches, so the property is not taken care of. So now code enforcement has Well, basically what are they doing now is identifying properties that's basically need to be torn down. And if property owners do not respond to that, the city will then tear it down and put a lien on the building. So now they don't like code enforcement for doing their job.
So what you say is that code enforcement is important, it has to happen.
Oh, in order to keep a better neighbor.
So that's a good word.
Yeah, that's
That's a good word. Okay, good. I just want to establish that, and Ken, that's what you also say.
Yeah, well, I think the lack of code.
It's really the lack of, that is the problem. I agree, absolutely. We spoke about top-down management versus grassroots. I think that's self-explanatory. I understand that very well, I understand the principle behind it. And what this process, in a sense, is grassroots, because we talk to the community. That's what Ryan's group does. We engage, we meet with them, and I kudos to the city that has made it possible for us to do so. It was an important motivation for them as part of this plan to make sure we consult with the public. That is grassroots, absolutely. Now, let us throw a few words out. What about urban or urban design? Say urban. Is urban a concern for you, the word urban? Why? Tell us why.
I'll let somebody else speak to that.
Okay, urban. Mabel, you have a problem with urban?
I don't personally.
You don't? No, okay, I want to know who has. Kurt?
Urban conflicts with the idea of Nacogdoches' small-town charm.
Okay.
And there's and I think you'll find that a lot of the people in Nacogdoches have a desire to preserve small-town charm. Sydney, for example, will tell you that she lived in Austin, and every time she goes to the grocery store, it takes an hour to get there and back. And so she likes living in Nacogdoches because
I just got my kid in 2 minutes.
it takes 10 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yep.
When you know, people in Nacogdoches think of urban as Tyler, Texas.
Right.
And some people will say, that's too big, you know. Well, Tyler is way smaller than Dallas, Fort Worth, or Houston, or Austin, San Antonio. So the Nacogdoches community, I think, embraces the idea of, like I say, the small town charm. And that's something that there's a desire within the community to preserve that. So urban is.
Don't like the word. Anyone of you feel the same?
Urban, to me, means the McDonaldization of what was a very unique small town. And all of a sudden, it looks like every other place.
Right.
And we've already done that to North Street. So to me, it's very dangerous I know they want the property taxes, and I know they want the increased value for things, but then they strip away what's left of our little island out here and make it into a suburb.
Where's Ryan? Ryan, you have a story to tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Say it loud enough that we can hear.
Yeah, I think I think what's interesting about a word like urban is it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I think what's super important is that the committees, we get on the same page of because we're gonna use that term in certain elements, but we're talking about something different than I think what you're talking about, because we absolutely agree, and that's the entire role of doing a comp plan, is to define those things and those values and those things that you want to protect and what you don't want to be, make it grassroots to where we organically are saying we do and do not want to be this. But I now live in a town of 5,000 people, so about fifth the size of this. Our downtown is urban, and what I mean by that is urban form, in that it's walkable, human scale. So a lot of the things that you talked about, your downtown and the historic buildings that you want to protect, those are, in a planning sense, urban elements. But we absolutely agree that when you just throw around the word urban, some people might even think hip hop music. They might think New York City. They might think a lot of different things with that term. And so it's really important for us to identify, when you hear urban, you guys latch on to identity aspects, and we want to make sure that we understand what about your identity are you wanting to protect and not be urban, because I don't think the city certainly doesn't have, and we don't have an agenda of McDonaldization of anything. We don't want that for sure. But I do think it's important to make sure that, because when we do look at the downtown, there are urban elements of your downtown. and there's some of your most favorite elements, and there's some of your most historic elements. And so I think it's just super important for us to make sure that if we say that, now we will choose our words carefully when we speak to the broader public, because we don't have the opportunity to have these types of conversations. But I do think it's important for you guys to, as the brand champions of this project, to really make sure that we
Absolutely,
are.
Does that help if we describe urban in that way? Does it change your idea and thinking behind that, the way that Ryan described it?
So you're using urban, is this correct? You would use the term urban to describe more of a high-density area of population, perhaps? Is that?
That's a good, very simple definition, yes.
Okay.
From your perspective, right, I think it's perspective, but from your perspective, I would consider downtown as urban, right? I mean, in terms of scale, in terms of experience, your downtown would be more urban than, you know, some of the rural areas. That's why I wanted to show kind of a graphical explanation.
Want to go through that for us, Jason?
You know, this would be your downtown, and this might be, y'all can hear me okay, can't you?
Yes.
You recording this? Yeah, I mean, this might be an example of stuff outside of the loop, right? And as you progress closer into, you know, towards the university and towards downtown, it gets higher density. And so in my mind, that would be your urban core. So I think it's just talking about vocabulary, and there may be opportunities to design a new neighborhood that might be what I would call suburban urban. You might do some sort of walkable entryway with a little bit of commercial that's organized in a way that sort of feels organized and might have some commercial character that might be unique rather than just doing strip centers or McDonald's. So I think when we think about urbanity or density, you know, we would be talking about maybe something along, you know, the scale, and it has to be context sensitive. Obviously, the issue would be is, you know, to put and we had this issue in Kyle, somebody wanted to put a, 24-story building, away from the freeway next to a neighborhood. You know, that's definitely urbanity or density. And it wasn't context sensitive, but if there's opportunities to increase quality and increase density in places that make sense, obviously that creates more economic opportunity. It's probably better utilization of the land, as long as it's true to the land, it's context sensitive, and it sort of fits within the context of the area, the geography that you're working in. Does that make sense? So I think it's just describing, I agree, density sounds like a terrible word until you can get into the details and get into the design, and then some places, quality density may make sense at the right scale.
And for Nacogdoches, I would say you probably end right here. That's where you end. And you will never, ever become that. Never.
Just helping you out. Maybe we find a spot.
Yeah, you'll never ever get there. But somewhere is where you end with your downtown. In fact, this works very well in the last comprehensive plan I did was for a very rural community. I used that Transact to explain the very principle. And they got it. They said, now we understand that. But let's talk about some other words that maybe comes to mind.
Thank you.
Yes.
One that comes to mind for me would be the status quo.
Status quo. Tell me, why do you say that?
Old money, limiting growth, limiting the types of businesses that would come into the area and the scale of those businesses. And a lot of people say Nacogdoches is old money versus Lufkin is more open. And so that would be one of the bad words.
We almost get the contrast here. Progress, status quo. It's kind of the opposite. And both words kind of could potentially be a negative understanding behind it. It's how we use that word or how we understand the word to prevent the negative aspect of it and maintain the good part of it. Progress can be a good thing if you do it right. If you do it wrong, it's bad. Status quo, if you protect things and you conserve things, it's a good thing. But if you use that to suppress, prevent the benefit for everyone, that's not a good word to use. So often it's the word in context that you must understand. But I do want to ask the word equity. How do you understand the word equity? Have you heard the word equity? And in what context have you heard it? And how do you feel about the word equity? Any thoughts?
Access?
Equity.
I'm saying my definition would be access.
Access, right?
Choices.
Choices. Mm-hmm. So for you, it's a good word.
It would be a good word.
A good word.
Yes.
Access, choices. Anyone else? Who thinks equity is a bad word? You don't see the bad word. You know, what's interesting to me is when I learned for the first time about the difference between equal and equity, very different. And when I understood that, then the word equity makes sense to me and I could accept it. But before that, I didn't understand it. So, but thank you for that definition. Anything else that comes to mind? Anyone, anything from our team? Any word you want to throw out there?
What about apartments?
Apartments? Apartments.
Multifamily?
Multifamily? Is that a concern, a fear for you? Oh, we can come and have them built here, that's fine.
It just depends where.
Exactly, that's so true. There's a context of it, Kathleen, where you do what.
So neighborhoods are really, really important. So there is a huge fear of apartments being stuck in or right at a neighborhood. That's a huge, so I don't know what word that would be, but that's a big fear. You've just been through that a number of times.
Have you heard the term mixed use or mixed use development? Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Is that a concern for you?
It depends on what it is. It could be. I mean, downtown it may not be, but in other places it's definitely.
If it rolls over a neighborhood, then it's a problem.
If it blocks a park, you know, if it limits access, if it's,
right.
If people suffer for one developer, I mean, all that is
What about affordable housing?
Affordable housing, is affordable housing a concern for you?
What does that mean?
Affordable housing, how do you define it, Ajay?
Anything that's subsidized through some, government process, whether it's Section 8 or, some other housing authority or.
So subsidized housing is kind of affordable housing. Make it affordable for someone who can't afford it out of their own pocket, their own salary, their own income. So you subsidize their housing. Is that a concern for you if you hear the word affordable housing?
Yeah, because, I think Walmart should pay its employees more so we don't have to use tax dollars to subsidize their rent checks. But that's a national political issue, but
right.
That's my view, yeah.
That's why they actually don't use employees anymore. They just have the self-checkout now.
That's right. That's right.
So what about say a housing project from 30, 40, 50 years ago that was developed in Nacogdoches and the subsidized funds have disappeared, and now that area has become an opportunity for revitalization. I think that general idea, I think, is probably it would be an issue for the Nacogdoches community. And a question I think you might get in this process is, so how will you plan for that scenario? How can you help Nacogdoches? How can this plan successfully navigate and prevent that, perhaps?
So what I understand from the question, and I may ask Jason to jump in here, but the question is, if you have a community that was historically subsidized, therefore they could survive and exist without the without that subsidization, they wouldn't be able to have been able to do that. Now that the subsidy has gone now, so they don't get that money anymore. So in a sense, they can't survive anymore. So what do you do now? Is that the question? What do you do with that community?
Certainly.
And how do you handle that?
How do you handle that? You could clearly see, I think here could point you to examples of that in Nacogdoches. And future planning standpoint, that's not the road that these people or the citizens of Nacogdoches want to go down. There's a concern.
What is the concern, if I may ask, about the situation?
Because those areas, those projects have become hotbeds of crime and drugs.
Saigon.
Problematic to the community, problem areas.
Right.
So you see how you come to Nacogdoches and you suggest that that we embrace those, you're speaking to a community that has done that 50 years ago in areas, and we don't like, the results are not acceptable at this point. Am I expressing that?
What some of the newer units have, more recent units have done is to only allocate a percentage of the properties, of the units, to be subsidized, and the other ones are just mainstream, ordinary folk with ordinary income. And they maintain the units in such a way that it's desirable for anyone to live there. And so, and I think that's one of the ways they address that issue of having a strictly 100% subsidized unit versus partial.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly one solution and option. And this is my own philosophy, and I don't have a bias here. I think we've got to, there's some details we need to dig into in terms of what's appropriate. But I do think that as a landlord or a rental occupant, there is a duty to maintain that house, at least whatever the minimum code requirements and the regulations in place. So I'm pretty clear on that. You know, again, I think, you know, crime's an issue, then, you know, part of this plan needs to find, you know, opportunities to increase wealth for the town so that they can afford to beef up, you know, code, you know, departments and, you know, upgrade the police department to be able to handle the issues at hand. But I'm also sensitive in, you know, Section 8 housing and programs. Certainly now, housing affordability is probably one of the biggest issues that communities have to address, and people are getting priced out of markets everywhere. And gentrification is a big issue. So I think, you know, creating, you know, finding ways to create housing to the extent that you can to accommodate all incomes is also a priority, and I think that needs to be balanced. But, you know, for me, if you own a home or an apartment complex, you've got a duty to mitigate crime and mitigate, you know, disrepair, and make sure that those units are held to, you know, the same accountability that anybody else would across town. So that's my philosophy. I mean, I think rules are rules to, you know, protect the greater good, but we'll dig into affordability and future demand and age levels and income, and we can give you some direction in terms of opportunity there. And some of this issue is just what I call things that contribute to a vicious and virtuous cycle. And you've got to mitigate things that contribute to a vicious cycle. So if there's some things that are sort of creating neighborhood decay and devaluing things, obviously from an economic perspective and a planning perspective, and just quality of life, those are some of the things that we definitely want to address. Does that answer the question?
And Jason, I think when people hear affordable housing, they automatically associate that with the government-assisted Section 8 housing that Mr.
Attainable housing, let's just say the word attainable housing.
Which is different than attainable housing, which isn't government-assisted, and maybe just a different housing product.
But I think, again, this needs to be, and I'm gonna say negotiated out, right? I think it needs to be resolved, whatever word you need, but we need to find policies that are appropriate for the plan and for your community that, you know, the leadership will support, the council will support, and that, you know, addresses the needs of the residents. I don't have the answer for that, but I can tell you that there's probably a high amount of incomes that where there's housing that, you know, is not satisfied, and that's probably both ends of the spectrum. There's probably luxury housing or incomes that could support luxury housing that you're not satisfying, and there's probably low-income housing that you're not satisfying. And so, you know, part of that may be looking at, you know, infill strategies and vacant lots and finding ways to create attainable and maybe mixed rate housing that makes sense. So that's a great topic.
And if I could, let me just qualify my point in saying that I'm not personally necessarily against any type of housing.
I get it. No,
I'm just saying that you guys may be faced with that explanation through this process.
Right, exactly.
So be prepared, that's all.
That's what we want to do. We want to know about anything that concerns the community, and that they will tell us.
There you go.
But be able to explain to them what we mean.
You just used a word, I think, that has become a devil word in this.
Oh, another one, okay, good.
And that is infill.
Yeah.
Infill.
And I think that for a lot of people, it has become a very negative term, and a very negative term. And partially because of the situation on Logansport, it has become that way. So
if you had neighborhood regulations or design criteria for housing, for infill housing that was more context sensitive, that matched the neighborhood style and character, would that be a bad word still, or is it just the way?
No, but I think you're gonna have to explain that.
Yeah, same thing with density.
And I think at this point, we don't have that. And we're doing a lot of spot zoning.
Yeah.
And it causes the situations like you end up with on Logansport, where you may get, a special use zoning that doesn't necessarily fit the character of the neighborhood.
All right, so note to team, housing pattern book, recommendation number. We got it. And some of the team may know this, I grew up below the poverty level till high school. So I get it. And I've lived now across pretty much all income ranges, and I love neighborhoods. And I love all neighborhoods, and I can get it from all different perspectives. Glad to be on the team.
So,
Big Francois, one.
Yes, Kathleen.
I just wanted to add one thing. I think the part of this is, and we really look forward to learning from you all of the different housing options.
Yes.
And all of the different opportunities where things may fit, where they don't fit. But I think the top-down, the authoritative, you need to do it here. I actually heard the term, some neighborhoods have to suffer for the good of the city. And that.
Just yours.
Yeah. Definitely. But anyway, that just makes you cringe.
Yeah.
So we really do need affordable housing. We need it in the city. We just recently went through something that was top-down, imposed, as opposed to a thoughtful, planned process together. So, we didn't do it, but that, we really do look forward to hearing your ideas for finding affordable housing, and particularly home ownership.
Yeah.
You all have been talking about rentals and apartments and things like that. There are many of us who want home ownership at even beginning, or a process to home ownership. So we really are very eager to hear your thoughts.
If you haven't watched the last city council meeting, I would suggest that you do that.
I watch it every night.
That was, I think you got a good indication of some of the concerns.
No, clearly. No, and it's great. I think this is the right time. And I think these discussions, again, we could spend 2 days on just talking through this. So I realize we're knocking the tops off of the trees, and not the skinny ones with no branches, but we'll dig into all this stuff, and we want to hear the details. And I think Francois will say this, and I'll give you my email address and my personal cell phone number if there's things you didn't talk about today and you want to, or tell me the bad house. We want to know as much as we can to do an effective job for you.
Before Ryan, want to say something?
Yeah, I think a really good example, though, is just that context is everything for all of these terms. There isn't infill, density, urban. There are times when you can use that as a tool to achieve anything you're wanting to protect. And to your question, and one of the things that we've been tasked with is putting together a list of resources, both books and, and our firm has a podcast, and one of the episodes is actually called Revitalization Without Gentrification. And when you talk about, when you think of, just take a dilapidated house or a neighborhood that has multiple dilapidated houses, it's probably providing nothing positive for the community, with the exception of one thing, and that it's providing a house for someone, right? And if you come in and you revitalize that, but it's now something they can't afford, they are displaced and have to go elsewhere. So you don't solve, well, where do they go? But there can be tools like, in the right context, in the right place, where you could use increased density or infill, because maybe that person is living in a dilapidated 1,500 square foot house because they can afford it, but what they really need is a nice 750 square foot place, and that place could be two things, and you increase the density. And so again, we're not saying we're trying to upzone your neighborhoods and do those things, but there can be places, in context-sensitive places, where you solve a problem, you improve the quality of the house. It's now a nicer house for that person, but they still can afford it because you've lessened their space. And so it's just about strategically using those things in the right places versus, I think anytime we try to label any word as good or bad, it becomes a problem.
I think, Ryan, one point I wanted to make, and you made a good point in terms of the choice, housing choice, and the range of types. We, in America have done a great job of the single family, and then you have done a great job of apartments, but the stuff that's in the middle, that not everyone may want to live in a big house, not everyone may want to live in an apartment. Are there choices for other housing that other people may need? I know in the student housing as one issue, but looking at the range of housing options, as the population changes and ages, there is going to be different needs. When you have a family, you have a different housing need. When you don't have kids, you have a different housing need. So when you're older and you don't drive, you have a different housing need. It's trying to address the whole range of housing needs of your community. It should also be focused on.
Well, thank you for that, Jay. And we've come to the end of our discussion, but before we end, what I want to do, I want to quickly go around the room, and I want you to, in one sentence, kind of summarize your experience today. You can say whatever you want to in terms of what was this about for you today. And so I'm going to keep it open-ended. So I'm going to ask you, start with you, Paul.
Okay.
Sum this up for you today.
Well, I'm very hopeful based on what I've heard. I'm very optimistic. The job, so.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Kathleen?
Interesting.
Interesting. Thank you. Marilyn?
It's getting to meet you all and see how you operate, and I think it gives people more confidence.
Thank you, Marilyn. Ken?
I am looking forward to getting this process started.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ken. Steele?
Engaged candor.
Engaged candor. Got it. I like it. Brad?
You know, I appreciate getting to know you guys because I don't feel like you're our enemies as it was portrayed. And a lot of times it was the fear of the unknown because we were just sitting around, we didn't know we needed a plan. And all of a sudden they go, guess what? You're getting a plan and we're going to tax you for it. And we were like, what just happened here? So it's good that we're getting to know you and you guys are open to us and let us speak freely. That was one sentence.
Yes, that's one sentence. Roy, one sentence to sum up your experience today.
Oh, awareness, enlightening.
Enlightening? Thank you for that, Roy. Appreciate it. Larry?
Interested.
Interesting. Good.
I'd say I hope that this has been informative to you folks so that you can understand our community better.
And I can confirm absolutely it is good. Absolutely. Your time used today is so valuable for us. So thank you. And Mabel?
Oh, it was great. I think there were some walls that came down today, and that we've set forth a platform that we can work together. And I see a lot of like minds in the room. So, looking forward.
Thank you, Mabel. And then with that, I'm going to ask the city to end maybe just the last word. I'm going to give it the mic to you, Elena, as being the client. So thank you, everybody, for being here today with Elena.
I just wanted to remind the group that this meeting does replace our March meeting. And so right now, the next meeting would be April 21st. That's the third Thursday in April. And we'll send out more information as we get closer to that. But just go ahead and mark your calendars for April 21st. Same place, same time. And we'll, yes, ma'am.
Is it 2 o'clock, or I know you have a...
Oh, so typically it's 3:30. We wanted to be earlier today to allow more time.
Okay, so 3:30?
3:30, yes, ma'am.
Here.
And
So again, thank you, everybody, for your time. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Survey stuff that we had.
Oh,